Chapter 53-51. If one could succeed in reaching the gold core realm by simply taking a stroll in the secular world, then what was the primordial underworld? Most importantly, it was guaranteed to reach gold core consummation within a year. Was there any justice in this? Bing Wuqing wouldn't say these things, and neither would Xue Jianfeng. Even if Hong Qingyuan and the others were itching to know, they could only hold it in and not press them. After all, they were both gold core consummation experts. Only nascent soul realm experts were qualified to interrogate them. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to do anything about it. In the end, they hadn't even figured out the matter of gold core consummation, and suddenly a nascent soul realm expert appeared. Was she crazy? However, the crowd's first reaction wasn't to believe her. Instead, they thought that Xue Jianfeng might have been scared out of his wits. He assumed that she was a nascent soul realm expert because he had been completely defeated by her. After all, it wasn't shameful for a gold core consummation expert to be defeated by a nascent soul realm expert. In the end, Bing Wuqing's next words made everyone completely dumbfounded. You only found out now? No one has such a slow reaction. The crowd gasped one after another. Everyone's mouth, including Hong Qingyuan's, opened so wide that a duck's egg could be stuffed inside. The same thing was written all over their faces. She really was a nascent soul realm expert. Hearing this affirmative answer, Xue Jianfeng's already pained expression became even more pained. He couldn't hold himself up anymore and collapsed to the ground, howling in pain. If she was just the strongest gold core cultivator, even if he wasn't as strong as her, he could still fight. But now, she had suddenly become a nascent soul realm expert. What could he do? He would never have guessed that the main purpose of Bing Wuqing's seclusion for half a month was not to get the half-consciousness grass from him, but to get the supreme-grade golden nascent gathering pill from Linny. In half a month, not only did she use up the half-consciousness grass, but she also used the supreme-grade golden nascent gathering pill to condense her nascent soul. Most importantly, she actually succeeded. Bing Wuqing's achievements in the primordial underworld could only be described as unprecedented. Even from Lin Yi's point of view, Bing Wuqing's innate talent was extremely important. Bing Wuqing's existence even reminded him of Lung Rufin, the little brother he had just taken in on Heaven's Stage Island. Lung Rufin was the signature figure of the East Continent's soaring Cloud Academy. There was no doubt that he was extremely talented. Of course, Lung Rufin was an expert of the mysterious ascension stage, and the strength of the two of them was far from being comparable. But in terms of talent alone, Lin Yi felt that Bing Wuqing was at the same level as him. This was almost the highest level, or else he wouldn't have invested so many elixirs on Bing Wuqing for no reason. Although Lin Yi had the divine pesticide cauldron, as long as he had enough elixirs, he could have as many top-grade elixirs as he wanted. However, the landlord did not have any surplus food. If he really found a piece of trash and randomly threw elixirs at him, he would be struck by lightning. Sometimes Lin Yi couldn't help but wonder if he could defeat freaks like Lung Rufin and Bing Wuqing if he didn't have so many heaven-defying cheats. This was probably a huge suspense. Fonger! Fonger! Xue Liping was completely dumbfounded when he saw the scene. He quickly rushed over and picked up Xue Jianfeng, who was in pain. In the past, he, as the vice sect leader, was definitely an incredible figure. But now that Xue Jianfeng and Bing Wuqing had risen to prominence, Xue Liping suddenly became insignificant. Today's events, other than echoing his son in the beginning, he was basically in the background. No one paid attention to him at all. It was only at times like this that he was able to get some screen time, but it was only a sad scene. Bing Wuqing, what did you do to my son? This is the Elders' Council, and he is the new executive vice sect leader. Do you want to challenge the entire Elders' Council? Xue Liping questioned with a face full of grief and indignation. He didn't hesitate to put a big hat on Bing Wuqing. He wasn't too sure if the other party was really a nascent soul old monster, but he had to say it. Everyone turned to look at them when they heard this. Then, two people immediately became the focus of attention. One was undoubtedly Bing Wuqing, and the other was Hong Qingyuan, who was supposed to be in charge of the situation as the sect leader. Hong Qingyuan didn't say anything. He looked at Bing Wuqing with everyone else. No one knew what he was thinking at this moment. Perhaps he was digesting Bing Wuqing's true strength, or perhaps he was thinking of corresponding countermeasures. After all, if the other party was really a nascent soul old monster, how he should deal with her was not something he could decide alone. He had to be extremely cautious, challenge the entire Elders' Council. Bing Wuqing looked at him, then at Hong Qingyuan and the others. She asked, according to what you're saying, when he attacked Elder Su just now, he also challenged the entire Elders' Council. Xue Liping choked. Under everyone's strange gazes, his old face flushed red. He tried to defend himself. That's different. Su Xiaodong offended his superior by standing in the way. This is a serious crime. Even if he was killed by foam or a sword, he deserved it. Blocking the way is offending your superior? Since when did our Snow Sword sect become so strict? Is it a new rule set by Vice Sect Leader Xue? Su Xiaodong immediately stood up and retorted. In the past, she might not have had the guts to do so. But now that she had a strong person like Bing Wuqing to back her up, she could finally vent her anger. Su Xiaodong, don't push your luck. Xue Liping suppressed his anger and glared at her. I think this sentence is more suitable for you and your son. This time, it was Bing Wuqing who spoke. She looked at them disdainfully and said, I'll say it here. In the future, no matter who opposes Lung Lung, that person will be my enemy. Don't talk to me about the sect's rules. I don't care at all. Remember, the outcome of going against me is death, unless you can survive under my hands. Her words made everyone break out in a cold sweat. It wasn't just Xue Liping and Xue Jianfeng. Even Hong Qingyuan and the others felt their eyelids twitching. Those who didn't know better would think that they had entered a mountain bandit's lair. Her words were too unbridled. But then again, if Bing Wuqing was really a nascent soul realm old monster, he really did have the right to say such things. One had to know that the rules of any sect were set by the nascent soul realm old monsters. Standing at the top of the immemorial underworld, they naturally had the right to do so. Scram! Bing Wuqing said the last word. Xue Liping wanted to stiffen his neck and continue to be stubborn. But after Xue Jianfeng, who was in great pain, growled at him, he immediately gave in. He didn't dare to say another word and quickly retreated with Xue Jianfeng on his back. Chapter 53-52. Just a moment ago, he was still flaunting his prowess, as if from now on, the Elder Council would be decided by the person surnamed Xue. But now, in less than the time it took to drink a cup of tea, he had already left with his tail between his legs. Wasn't the change in style a little too quick? No one spoke for a long time. Finally, it was Hong Qingyuan who broke the silence. Hong Qingyuan was just about to call Bing Wuqing by her name, but he thought that it would be overstepping his authority if she was really a nascent soul old monster. So he could only say vaguely, Please forgive me for asking, but have you really condensed your nascent soul? This was a serious matter, and he couldn't afford to be careless. He had to brace himself and confirm it 100%, otherwise he would become a laughing stock. Do you need me to show you? As Bing Wuqing spoke, she released an unprecedentedly powerful aura from her body. This was different from the merciless ice force. Strictly speaking, the merciless ice force was an offensive technique that she could control at will. Moreover, with her current level of control, she was extremely proficient in it. Apart from the person herself, no one would be able to get a clear idea of what she was capable of, which was why they were suspicious of her. But at this moment, the aura was different. It was the most intuitive feeling. Everyone immediately understood that this was definitely a genuine, original soul realm old monster. Greetings, Grand Elder. Hong Qingyuan no longer had the slightest doubt. He hurriedly led everyone to pay their respects, not daring to show the slightest bit of neglect or disrespect. Regardless of Bing Wuqing's previous identity, and regardless of her seniority, according to the ancestral teachings, as long as there was someone in the sect who had advanced to the nascent soul realm, that person would automatically become the Grand Supreme Elder. Everyone, from the head of the sect to the ordinary disciples, had to pay their respects to her. Otherwise, it would be seen as deceiving her master. Bing Wuqing was not surprised by this. She nodded slightly and waved her hand. Get up, all of you. Thank you, Supreme Elder. Only then did Hong Qingyuan lead the rest of them to stand before Bing Wuqing respectfully, not daring to put on any of the usual dignified airs. Showing off in front of a nascent soul old monster was akin to courting death. This was a principle that even Shui Jianfeng knew. Since you've given Shui Jianfeng the position of deputy sect leader, shouldn't you also give me a position? Bing Wuqing asked casually. Huh. Hong Qingyuan and the others couldn't help but be stunned. He was already a Grand Elder. What position did he still need? Is there a problem? Bing Wuqing glanced at him. Please enlighten me, Grand Elder. Hong Qingyuan broke out in a cold sweat under his stare. Logically speaking, as the leader of a sect, he had dealt with many nascent, soul old monsters in the past, so he shouldn't be this nervous. The key was that Bing Wuqing was definitely an anomaly. She had always had an eccentric temper, and Hong Qingyuan hadn't had many dealings with Bing Wuqing in the past. Besides, she was moody just now, and he couldn't read her pulse. There's already a Grand Elder, and now you're calling me Grand Elder. Aren't you messing around? Why don't we follow Shui Jianfeng's example and get an executive Grand Supreme Elder? Perhaps it was because she had just broken through and was in a good mood, but there was a rare hint of ridicule in Bing Wuqing's tone. Executive Grand Elder? Everyone's eyes widened when they heard this. What was going on? That Hong Qingyuan hesitated for a moment, then smiled bitterly and said, I'm afraid this isn't something we can decide. You know, too, that the Elders Guild can only discuss and decide matters of the sect below me, the sect leader. Strictly speaking, it's Shui Jianfeng's executive vice elder. It's already a little overboard for us to decide on our own, not to mention your executive Grand Supreme Elder. I'm afraid this matter has to be discussed between you and Elder Tong. We don't have the right to express our opinions. Elder Tong was the original Grand Supreme Elder of the Snow Sword faction. Didn't Elder Tong say he's in seclusion? You want me to call him out directly? Bing Wuqing frowned. Then why don't you wait a little longer for Elder Tong to come out of seclusion before talking to him in detail? Hong Qingyuan suggested carefully. I can't wait that long, Bing Wuqing replied casually. Hong Qingyuan choked instantly. He turned to look at Qi Qianqiu and the others, feeling even more conflicted than before. They'd finally gotten rid of the lawless Shui Jianfeng, and now a nascent soul old monster with an eccentric temperament had arrived. Wasn't this even harder to serve? Can't wait? Then what should they do? Hong Qingyuan was racking his brains for a reply when Bing Wuqing's next words solved his dilemma. I'm going out for a while. We'll talk about the matter of the executive Grand Supreme Elder when I come back. You're going out. Hong Qingyuan and the others were stunned. I'm going to the North Island, Bing Wuqing said dispassionately. Do you know anyone in the North Island? Hong Qingyuan asked. Interrogate me? Bing Wuqing's expression softened a little, which was rare for her. She immediately reverted to her usual expressionless face, which was intimidating. No. Your disciple wouldn't dare. Hong Qingyuan shook his head quickly and explained. Your disciple doesn't mean to be disrespectful at all. I'm just thinking that if you're going to visit other sects, your disciple should arrange for a guard of honor to accompany you as soon as possible. Once a new nascent soul realm, old monster appeared in any sect, he or she would basically go out to visit other sects and show his or her face. This was to show off his or her strength, and there were many rituals involved, so he or she must not be neglected. Otherwise, even if people seemed afraid on the surface, they would privately laugh at him or her for being a nouveau riche who didn't even know the basic visiting rules. No, I'm just going to see someone. There's no need to go through all that trouble. By the way, when I'm not here, you guys look after Lung Lung. If anything happens to her before I come back, I'll hold you responsible, Bing Wuqing reminded them. Yes. Hong Qingyuan and the others were stunned. They didn't know why Bing Wuqing was taking care of Lung Lung so much. But since Bing Wuqing had said so, they had to protect Lung Lung, even if they had to risk their lives. Otherwise, they would be going against the nascent soul realm old monsters. How many lives did they have? Fortunately, Xue Jianfeng had already suffered a great loss just now. The injury on his leg was normal, and he wouldn't be able to recover without a few months' time. Of course, if Hong Qingyuan and the others were really determined, it would be useless for Xue Jianfeng to act recklessly. Hong Qingyuan alone was enough to suppress him. Previously, they were just wary, but now that they had Bing Wuqing to back them up, there was nothing to be afraid of. One was a golden core perfected, and the other was a nascent soul realm old monster. There was no need to consider which side to choose. Bing Wuqing nodded and immediately asked someone to prepare a snow sword sex, best flying spirit beast. Under the gazes of Hong Qingyuan and the others, it rose into the sky and soon became a black that disappeared into the horizon. Our snow sword sect is finally about to usher in a new era. Qi Qianqiu sighed, half gratified and half sorrowful. Chapter 53:53. However, things were different now. With the addition of Bing Wuqing, a nascent soul expert, the Snow Sword faction had two nascent soul old monsters. Even if this top-notch combat force could not be compared to the 4 major sects and clans, it was undoubtedly one of the best among the 10 minor sects and clans. In the past, although the Snow Sword faction status was not bad, it did not have much say in the Middle Island Alliance. From now on, this rule would probably have to be changed. Yes, the patriarch spirit is here. There is hope for our Snow Sword faction to prosper. Hong Qingyuan looked at the horizon, his eyes shining. Even though the sudden rise of Bing Wuqing and Xue Jianfeng was a big problem for him, as long as he could handle them well, the strength of the entire Snow Sword faction would definitely improve by leaps and bounds. How could Hong Qingyuan not have any ambitions to become a sect leader? He had a premonition that the time for the Snow Sword faction to flourish had come. After leaving the Snow Sword faction, Bing Wuqing drove the flying spirit beast straight to the North Island. The person she was going to see was naturally Linny. Xue Jianfeng had already been crippled by him, and he had just said some harsh words in front of everyone in the elders' meeting. Before he left, he had specially reminded him. In his opinion, this was enough to complete the task that Lin Yi had given him before they parted. At least in the short term, no one in the Snow Sword faction would dare to provoke Cold, unless that person was crazy. Since Cold no longer had any worries, there was naturally no need for Bing Wuqing to stay in the Snow Sword faction. People like Xue Jianfeng might enjoy the feeling of being the highest supreme elder, but obviously Bing Wuqing was not. She had no interest in this kind of thing. Now that she had successfully broken through to the nascent soul realm, the first thing she had to do was to see Lin Yi, in addition to completing the task that Lin Yi had entrusted to her. There were 2 reasons. The first was to show her loyalty. It was all thanks to Lin Yi that he was able to become a nascent soul cultivator in such a short period of time. If it weren't for Lin Yi constantly giving him these top-quality pills, then it would simply be unimaginable. Therefore, he had to express his heartfelt gratitude and show his loyalty to Lin Yi. Otherwise, if he became arrogant and thought that he was strong enough, then he wouldn't need to fear anyone anymore. Then he would definitely die a miserable death. Since Lin Yi could create him, he could naturally destroy him easily as well. Bing Wuqing's heart was as clear as a mirror. Don't forget that Lin Dongfang had personally planted a spell in his body. The second reason was to ask Lin Yi about the next step of her mission. Lin Yi had spent so many top-quality pills to make him a nascent soul old monster who stood at the top of the immemorial underworld. Bing Wuqing believed that it was not as simple as asking her to protect Cold. Intuition told her that Lin Yi must have a deeper reason for doing so, and it must be related to the core. It was nothing in the past, but now that she had become a nascent soul old monster, every move she made was being watched. Bing Wuqing knew that she had to think carefully before she did anything, and most importantly, she had to figure out Lin Yi's attitude. Otherwise, if she accidentally went against Lin Yi's wishes, it would be an undeserved disaster. Apart from that, Bing Wuqing actually had another selfish motive. She knew very well that only by behaving obediently would she be able to continue obtaining supreme-grade, golden nascent, condensing pills from Lin Yi. Although nascent soul old monsters were already standing at the pinnacle of the immemorial martial world, to her, the early nascent soul stage was just the beginning. Following a freak like Lin Yi, Bing Wuqing never thought that the nascent soul stage was the end. In fact, whether it was Lin Yi or the core, both were enough to completely overturn her previous view of the world. To quote a saying, her future goal must be the sea of stars, and the nascent soul stage was just a starting point. But then again, going to the North Island so openly was equivalent to exposing his identity to some people, such as Xue Jianfeng, whom she had just taught a lesson to. Of course, Bing Wuqing wasn't stupid. She had already weighed the pros and cons before she did this. In fact, the fact that she was Lin Yi's follower could no longer be kept a secret from the moment she successfully condensed her nascent soul. Even if she didn't go to the North Island to meet Lin Yi, Xue Jianfeng, and those people from the core could easily deduce that there was something fishy behind it. After all, the core didn't have the nature-defying technology that allowed her to condense her nascent soul so quickly. In fact, as Bing Wuqing had expected, Xue Jianfeng was the first to realize that she was an expert of the nascent soul stage. That was why he admitted defeat and retreated so decisively. One had to know that Bing Wuqing, who was in the same camp, and Bing Wuqing, who was in the opposite camp, were two completely different things to Xue Jianfeng. The former usually wouldn't do anything to him, and he could still brace himself to save face, but the latter would really kill him. Xue Jianfeng was arrogant and presumptuous, but he wasn't stupid at all. After realizing this inside story, he didn't hesitate to give up on trying to be brave, because that would definitely be courting death. Feng, how's the injury on your leg? After Xue, Liping carried Xue Jianfeng back to the cave abode. He looked at his son's blood-soaked legs helplessly. I won't die. Xue Jianfeng gritted his teeth and endured the intense pain. Bing Wuqing didn't kill him, but his legs were frozen. But this wasn't an ordinary freeze. It was an injury caused by the advanced version of Heartless Ice Force. It wasn't easy to treat the injury in a short period of time, and if it wasn't treated properly in time, it could easily leave indelible sequelae. His legs might even be disabled forever. This was a devastating blow to an expert of the Golden Core Perfected Realm who was determined to advance to the next level. This injury is no small matter. I'll call the people from the medical hall over for you, Xue Liping said after some thought. There's no need. The medical hall is filled with Qi Qianzhou's people, and now that Bing Wuqing is in power, those good-for-nothings won't do their best to treat my injuries. They might even do something behind the scenes. Xue Jianfeng reached out to stop him. Actually, it wasn't that he didn't want to be treated, but he didn't want to be examined. If the poisonous gas in his body was found, it would be troublesome. Then what should we do? We can't just bear it like this, can we? Xue Liping said with a frown. He had always been very concerned about this son of his. Now that Xue Jianfeng had suddenly become a Golden Core Perfected Realm expert, and his strength was a notch higher than his father's, he was naturally even more concerned. How about this? Help me send a message to the people outside. They'll have a way to deal with this, Shui Jianfeng said, enduring the pain. People outside? You mean? Shui Liping was stunned. Chapter 53-54. The reason why the bespectacled professor thought highly of Shui Jianfeng and even came forward to fight for him to be specially trained was not only because of his talent and strength, but also because his father was the vice leader of the sect. Once he could rope him in, with Shui Liping's connections, many things would be easier to handle, and it would save them a lot of trouble in the early stages of entering the immemorial underworld. Of course, Shui Jianfeng did not forget this most important task. In fact, from the first day he returned to the Snow Sword School, he had already been doing his father's work. It was just that this matter was of great importance, and he could not make up his mind until he saw how terrifying the center was. After all, this was a matter of life and death for their Shui clan. If they succeeded, then they would soar to great heights. But if they failed, then they would definitely suffer a huge loss. This was related to the future and fate of the entire clan. So Shui Liping had no choice but to be careful. Shui Jianfeng was not in a hurry. He knew that this kind of thing needed a process of acceptance. Besides, even with the center's methods, entering the immemorial underworld was not something that could be done in a day or two. During this period of time, they would at most send a small advance team over to get a feel of things. It was not the time to make a big move yet, so he was not in a hurry to get his father to choose a side. But now that things had happened so suddenly and Bing Wuqing's sudden rise had completely disrupted their rhythm. She was a nascent soul realm old monster. In this situation, if they did not find the center to discuss this quickly, Shui Jianfeng felt like he was a rooster waiting to be slaughtered. If Bing Wuqing was unhappy, she could take his life at any time. Shui Liping hesitated for a moment with a gloomy expression, but finally stomped out and prepared to contact the center's advance team according to Shui Jianfeng's instructions. It was not that he did not believe in the center's strength. In fact, with Shui Jianfeng and Bing Wuqing as two living examples, he no longer had any doubts about the center's great strength. He just had not clearly weighed the pros and cons. Now that Shui Jianfeng was seriously injured and Bing Wuqing was so overbearing, if he chose to retreat unconditionally, the other party would definitely take a mile after taking an inch. Shui Liping could see clearly that his future days would only get harder and harder. So, unless he gave up his son, Shui Jianfeng, and was willing to be a coward. Otherwise, he had no other choice. Looking at Shui Liping's back as he left, the corners of Shui Jianfeng's mouth curled into a strange smile for some reason. It wasn't because his father had finally made a wise decision, but because of Bing Wuqing. Indeed, Bing Wuqing, who had suddenly become a nascent soul old monster, was a huge threat to him. But at the same time, it also exposed the other party's background. Since he had betrayed the core, then no matter how strong he was already a dead man. Shui Jianfeng did not doubt this point at all. Although Shui Jianfeng's legs were heavily injured by the other party's merciless ice force, in reality, he couldn't help but feel excited and even elated. Bing Wuqing was a traitor. This meant that he had one less strong competitor in the fight for resources in the center. In terms of talent and strength, the others were no match for her. At the very least, he'd already become the only target that was worthy of the center's fostering, and the benefits he represented was obvious. To a certain extent, this was simply a blessing in disguise. North Island, Blue Cloud Sect. Under the gaze of a crowd of disciples, a giant snow eagle descended from the sky. Everyone looked at it and started talking about it. Although all the flying spirit beasts of the ancient sects were mainly spirit birds, that was only for the ordinary elders and disciples, and some of the higher-ups with special status. The flying spirit beasts they used were often the symbolic spirit beasts of their respective sections. For example, Hong Zijuan, the leader of the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island, rode on a spiritual eagle. Snow Eagle was the symbolic spirit beast of the Snow Sword sect in the Middle Island. Seeing Bing Wuqing dismount from the back of the Snow Eagle, Everyone looked at each other. Although the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island and the Snow Sword sect in the Middle Island were both part of the 10 small sects and families, one belonged to the North Island Alliance, while the other belonged to the Middle Island Alliance. They had almost no contact with each other, and the higher-ups of the sects rarely visited each other. What was going on today? "May I ask who you are?" a supervising disciple walked up and asked. "Snow Sword Sect. Bing Wuching," Bing Wuching said lightly. Hearing this name, everyone was shocked. Bing Wuching was a real celebrity in the small Jianghu of the primeval times. Back then, she was the most famous person in the foundation establishment stage, and almost all the disciples of the primeval sects looked up to a genius. Even in this remote North Island, she was well known. But why would such an influential figure suddenly appear here? "Your Excellency, what brings you to the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island?" the supervising disciple asked, neither servile nor overbearing. "I'm here to see someone. His name is Lin Yi, and he's the primeval uncle master of the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island." Bing Wuching spoke bluntly. Since she had come to the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island publicly, there was no need for her to be secretive. Even if she publicly revealed her relationship with Lin Yi, she believed that Lin Yi wouldn't mind. "Primeval Uncle Master?" The supervising disciple was slightly stunned. He thought that since she had come from afar, she was most likely here to visit on behalf of the Snow Sword sect. He didn't expect that she was here to see Lin Yi. "Is there a problem?" Looking at his weird expression, Bing Wuching frowned. The supervising disciple hesitated. Nowadays, Lin Yi, the so-called primeval Uncle Master, was a highly controversial figure to the entire Blue Cloud sect in the North Island, because he stood on the opposite side of highest Elder Chinjiu, except for Exanigia and the others. The other disciples basically stayed away from him. After all, in their opinion, going against a nascent soul realm old monster was simply courting death, and there was no possibility of winning. "Go and ask for instructions. I'll wait." Bing Wuching didn't know what happened to Lin Yi and the others, but judging from the supervising disciple's reaction, she had vaguely sensed that something was wrong. Of course, before figuring out the specific situation, she couldn't act rashly. She could only wait and see. All right, the supervising disciple didn't dare to be negligent. Even if Bing Wuching didn't say it, he had to report this kind of thing as soon as possible. How to deal with this uninvited guest wasn't something that a mere supervising disciple should worry about. Soon after, a few high-level gold core cultivators of the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island hurriedly showed up. Their leader was none other than Lu Pingon, the direct disciple of highest Elder Chinjiu. Chapter 53-55. After all, he was not only powerful and experienced, but more importantly, he had the solid backing of the highest elder. In this aspect, the other gold core stage seniors could only look up to him. Looking at this scene, Bing Wuching became more and more suspicious, because she didn't see Exanigia. Logically speaking, Exanigia was the one who had the closest relationship with Lin Yi among all the senior members of Green Cloud sect in the North Island, and he had also dealt with her before. Logically speaking, Exanigia should be the most suitable person to receive her at this time. So why didn't he even show his face? "Bing Wuching, my little friend, you've come from afar. Please forgive us for not going out to welcome you." Lu Pingon smiled and cupped his hands in greeting, behaving extremely politely. At least from his point of view, he was already very polite. Even if Bing Wuching was also a golden core expert, she was still a junior to him. Addressing her as a young friend was already a form of flattery. Little did he know that Bing Wuching was not even in the gold core stage now. He wasn't giving her face at all, but was trying to flatter himself. It's okay. Bing Wuching didn't care about this at all. Her reputation meant nothing to her, and she had never considered such things. She went straight to the point and said, "Can I pay a visit to your Grandmaster Lin Yi now?" May I ask if there's anything special, my little friend Bing Wuching? Is this your personal wish, or the wish of your sect? Lu Pingan asked tentatively. Personal, Bing Wuching said directly. Lu Pingan raised his eyebrows, looked at the other gold core stage seniors beside him, and breathed a sigh of relief. If Bing Wuching came to visit Lin Yi on behalf of the Snow Sword sect, it would be a big problem for them. After all, it was likely that Lin Yi had a close relationship with the Snow Sword sect. If they wanted to deal with Lin Yi, they would have to consider the feelings of the Snow Sword sect. Fortunately, this was Bing Wuching's personal matter, so there was nothing to worry about. I'm sorry, but Grandmaster Lin Yi is currently in seclusion. I'm afraid you've made a wasted trip. Please go back. Lu Pingan immediately asked her to leave without hesitation. Seclusion? Bing Wuching frowned even more. If she hadn't sensed something strange just now, she might have believed it. But at this moment, his intuition told him that there was definitely a problem. As an expert, especially a super genius like Bing Wuching, her instincts had always been extremely sharp. Not bad. Grandmaster Lin Yi has been in seclusion ever since he arrived here, and no one dares to disturb him. Hence, if my young friend Bing Wuching wishes to visit him, I'm afraid you'll have to wait for the next opportunity, Lu Pingan said with an apologetic look on his face. He looked rather sincere. Unfortunately, Bing Wuching obviously wouldn't give up so easily. He glanced at Lu Pingan and said, "Take me to the ascending heaven cliff." Huh. Lu Pingan was stunned for a moment. The other party's tone really confused him. Rather than saying it was a request, it sounded more like a condescending order. Was there something wrong with this guy's brain? It was understandable that a talented genius like Bing Wuching would be a little arrogant. But the problem was that this wasn't the Snow Sword sect, but the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island. She had come all the way to the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island to act like a tyrant. Didn't he think about the consequences of his actions? Moreover, even if Bing Wuching's attitude was better and she made a request in a proper manner, Lu Pingan would never agree, because the request itself was already out of line. Although the Ascending Heaven Cliff was mostly used to imprison special people, it was a place of great significance to the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island. Apart from the high-level Golden Core cultivators, even the disciples of the sect couldn't easily approach it, let alone open it to an outsider like Bing Wuching. Moreover, Lin Yi was currently imprisoned on the Ascending Heaven Cliff. Now was the time for the standoff, so how could Lu Pingan allow an outsider like Bing Wuching to see him? I'm sorry, but the Ascending Heaven Cliff is a forbidden area of the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island. Even the disciples of the sect can't approach it casually. Your request is a little too much. If it weren't for the other party's identity, Lu Pingan would have definitely started to chase her away without hesitation. However, she was after all a genius who used to be unparalleled in the Snow Sword sect of the Middle Island. If he embarrassed her too much, it would be equivalent to humiliating the entire Snow Sword sect to a certain extent. He didn't want to cause such unnecessary trouble. The Ascending Heaven Cliff is a forbidden area? Bing Wuching raised her eyebrows. The more the other party tried to deny it, the more suspicious she became. However, she couldn't just fall out with him before figuring out the specific situation. She glanced at Lu Pingan and said, "Does this mean you can't make the decision?" The corner of Lu Pingan's eye twitched, and an inexplicable anger rose in his heart. What kind of contemptuous look was that? She was too condescending. That's right. Lu Pingan still didn't fall out with her. Holding back his anger, he said, "If you want to let people enter the Ascending Heaven Cliff forbidden area, you have to at least have the right to decide. However, it just so happens that our sect leader and deputy sect leader are both busy, so we can't do it for the time being." Lu Pingan was already very well-mannered to be able to say this much. If it were anyone else, even if they didn't fall out with her face-to-face, they would definitely leave in a huff. "Bing Wuching, you're just a new junior. Why are you acting like a big boss here? What about the Grand Supreme Elder?" Your Grand Supreme Elder should have the right to do so, right? Take me to him, Bing Wuching said, smoothly. What? Lu Pingan and the others were collectively dumbfounded when they heard this. They looked at each other for a moment, then said, You want to see our Grand Supreme Elder? Yes, you're not going to tell me that your Grand Supreme Elder isn't here either, are you? Bing Wuching asked casually. The Grand Supreme Elder is here, and he does have the right to do so, but he's the stabilizing force of our Blue Cloud sect in the North Island. How can you, an outsider, meet him just because you say so? Do you think that your Grand Supreme Elder will agree to meet anyone who comes and asks to see your Snow Sword Sect's Grand Supreme Elder? Lu Pingan's face was tinged with sarcasm, and the other Gold Core Stage higher-ups also looked contemptuous. Was there something wrong with this guy's brain? Asking to see the Grand Supreme Elder as soon as he opened his mouth? Did he really think that the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island belonged to his family? That depends on who it is. Bing Wuching wasn't angry about this. People like her, who were extremely rational and pragmatic, rarely got angry with others. What was the use of getting angry? Besides, they were on a different level now, so she wouldn't get angry easily. Chapter 53-56. If you're here on behalf of the Snow Sword sect, we can still consider it. But since it's your own business, there's nothing more to say. That's all I have to say. We've already given you and your sect a lot of face. Goodbye. What if I don't go? Bing Wuching looked indifferent. Hearing that, Lu Pingan and the others' faces darkened. Their tone changed, and they said, Those who come from afar are guests. The Blue Cloud sect of the North Island is not a place without rules. But if you insist on challenging our sect's bottom line, don't blame us for being impolite. As soon as he said that, several high-level Golden Core cultivators immediately surrounded Bing Wuching. The other disciples of the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island also became nervous. Without any orders, they spontaneously surrounded her from all directions. They all knew that Bing Wuching was a Golden Core expert. Under normal circumstances, ordinary disciples wouldn't dare to get too close to her. But this was the territory of the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island, and Lu Pingan and a group of even more powerful high-level Golden Core cultivators were here. Of course, they had nothing to be afraid of. After all, if a fight really broke out, they wouldn't have to do anything. At most, they would just support her. After the fight, they could brag to others that they had fought Bing Wuching. That would be a good topic of conversation. I don't want to fight. Even though Bing Wuching said so, her hands didn't move at all. However, the materialized merciless ice force had already seeped out of her body in an instant. The group of Golden Core experts, including Lu Pingan, didn't even have time to react before a thin layer of ice covered their bodies. As for the ordinary disciples on the periphery, they weren't affected. If such a strong, ruthless ice momentum was used on them, a large number of them would die today. That would be a massacre, and there would be no room for redemption. Even so, it was enough to frighten everyone present. They didn't dare to act rashly anymore, especially the high-level Golden Core cultivators led by Lu Pingan. Although the ice only covered the surface of their bodies, it wasn't as serious as it was against Xue Jianfeng. However, their strength could not compare to Xue Jianfeng, a Golden Core perfection expert. The strongest among them was Lu Pingan. The strongest among them, Lu Pingan, was only at the peak of the late Golden Core stage. Being covered by the ice, everyone felt as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. The piercing coldness seemed to come from the depths of their souls, making them tremble in fear. Under such circumstances, they would be lucky if they didn't kneel down, let alone fight back. You, what do you want to do? Lu Pingan knew that he still wouldn't give up. Although he was as scared as the others, this was the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island. Even if Bing Wuching was really more powerful than them, he didn't believe that Bing Wuching would dare to make a move here. She would be making an enemy of the entire Blue Cloud clan of the North Island, or even the entire North Island Alliance. Who would have the guts to do that? I've said it just now. I want to see your Grand Supreme Elder, Bing Wuching said impassively. You think you can see him just like that? Lu Pingon was so angry that he gritted his teeth. His current state was one of anger and humiliation. That's right, the other party's sudden move had indeed shocked him. He had initially thought that Bing Wuching was just a junior in the early stage of the Golden Elixir realm. He had not expected her to be such an expert. He finally realized that he had underestimated his enemy. But so what if he underestimated the enemy? Did he really think that he would be able to see the Grand Elder just by showing off a bit of his strength? What did this guy think the North Island Blue Cloud sect was? Did he really think that this was a place where he could behave atrociously? Bing Wuching glanced at him and said a few words, which was rare for her. People are generally divided into two types. Some people have foresight, and some people only realize it after a while. But I found out that you're the third type. What do you mean? Lu Pingon was stunned. I didn't realize it, Bing Wuching said impassively. Lu Pingon was speechless for a long time. They all said that Bing Wuching was a heartless person. Why was she so vicious today? Lu Pingon was about to retort when an inexplicable and powerful aura suddenly spread out from Bing Wuching. This time, everyone's expression changed at the same time. They were even more frightened than when they were frozen by the merciless ice momentum. This aura, she was clearly a nascent soul realm old monster. Lu Pingon almost peed his pants. The expression on his face was brilliant. He would never have thought that Bing Wuching, a young junior, was already a nascent soul realm old monster at the top. You're really Bing Wuching? Lu Pingon asked a stupid question, subconsciously. Of course, the other party was Bing Wuching. Even if she didn't say her name, they could still recognize her. After all, she was the leader of the younger generation back then. The higher-ups of the primeval sects would more or less pay attention to her. However, Lu Pingon couldn't believe the fact that Bing Wuching had become a nascent soul realm old monster. After all, it was too shocking. Bing Wuching ignored him and said directly, Do I have the right to see your highest elder now? Everyone looked at each other, then turned their heads stiffly to look at Lu Pingon. When they were frozen just now, they thought that they could still fight with the other party with the advantage of numbers and home advantage. But now that they found out that the other party was actually a nascent soul realm old monster, this absurd idea was immediately thrown out of Java. Against a nascent soul realm old monster, it would be difficult to win even if there were another 40 of them, let alone the 4 Golden Core experts present. With the intrinsic difference between the Golden Core and nascent soul realm, it was not something that could be made up for with numbers alone. There was only one way to deal with a nascent soul realm old monster, and that was to let the nascent soul realm old monster of their own sect fight in person. It was also because of this that the status of nascent soul realm old monsters in the primeval underworld was so high that it directly became a key indicator of a sect status. There was nothing that could be done about it. An archaic sect with a nascent soul old monster as its overseer was indeed stronger than one without one. If they really fought, a nascent soul old monster was enough to annihilate any ordinary sect. These ordinary sects didn't have any means to fight back. So what could they do? I didn't expect Your Excellency to already be the highest elder of the Snow Sword sect. We've been disrespectful. Lu Pingon's expression was extremely ugly, but he had no choice but to force a smile. He smiled apologetically and said, The highest elder is the highest representative of a sect. Since it's a matter of the highest elder, it's also a matter of the entire sect. Please wait in the guest hall. I'll go and report to my highest elder right now. After saying that, Lu Pingon did not dare to delay any further. He gestured to the other Golden Core experts to entertain Bing Wuching, while he hurried to the top of the mountain. Chapter 53-57. These days they had been in a stalemate. Lu Pingon was in charge of the negotiation. Seeing that Chen Dongqing's breath was getting weaker day by day, Lu Pingon became more and more anxious. It could be said that he was looking forward to this personal disciple who could take on a big responsibility to bring him good news as soon as possible. Unfortunately, this time his hope was obviously going to fail again. Reporting to master, not yet. Lu Pingon was a little embarrassed. Not only did Qin Jiu have high hopes for him, but he was also ready to show his skills these days. After all, his direct opponent was Exanijia, who was almost the most unattractive person among all the high-level gold core stage cultivators in the Green Cloud sect in the North Island. Whether in terms of strength, status, or shrewdness, Lu Pingon believed that he could at least leave the other party behind by 10 streets. However, he did not expect that such a sloppy and ordinary good guy would suddenly become an impervious old fox after sitting at the negotiating table. No matter what strategy he used, it would always be kicked back to his feet in the end. That was not all. The key was that Exanijia did not just kick the ball around. Every time he was reasonable and eloquent, which made Lu Pingon unable to find any room to refute. Every time he could only sigh, Exanijia, you can't judge a book by its cover. You're too slow. Chen Jiu's eyes were somewhat unfathomable, although it was said that there was no need to be suspicious of a person, and the other party was also his most successful pro-disciple, so there was nothing to be suspicious about. However, he was naturally suspicious, and after a long time, it was inevitable that he would have doubts. Moreover, from Lu Pingon's standpoint, there was indeed a motive in this regard. After all, if Chen Dongqing was really exhausted to death, Lu Pingon was likely to be the biggest beneficiary. Yes, I'm sorry to disappoint you. I will speed up the negotiation and buy time for Deputy Leader Chen. Lu Pingon was frightened by this sentence and quickly showed his loyalty. Tell me, what's wrong? Qin Jiu glanced at him. At this time, although Lu Pingon was not seriously injured, he was unprecedentedly embarrassed. Looking at the whole Green Cloud sect in the North Island, there were very few people who could threaten him, an expert at the peak of the late Gold Core stage, unless Lin Yi took action himself. Yes, Bing Wuqing from the Snow Sword sect came to visit and asked to see Lin Yi. After I refused, she changed her request. She wants to see you, master. Lu Pingon said respectfully, Bing Wuqing. Hearing this, Chen Jiu thought for a moment and vaguely had an impression of it. He casually said, Isn't it just a young boy who just entered the Gold Core stage? Just send him away. Do you need to report such a trivial matter? Ah, that's what I thought in the beginning. But that won't do. He's a newly advanced original infant stage expert. I can't chase him away. Lu Pingon could only smile bitterly. What, original soul stage? Even Chen Jiu couldn't help but be shocked when he heard this. The birth of any new nascent soul old monster was a big event that could shake the entire immemorial martial arts world. Due to the great difficulty of breaking through to the nascent soul realm, it was impossible to achieve it without a few years' time. Normally, they would have received news of it in advance. How could this fellow succeed without a word? Moreover, Bing Wuqing was so young. Could it be a smokescreen? Seeing Chen Jiu's doubts, Lu Ping and hurriedly said, It's true this disciple and a few other elders have personally felt his aura. He is indeed a nascent soul expert. There is no doubt about this. Lead the way, Chen Jiu said solemnly. There was no way Lu Ping would lie to him about something like this, since he had confirmed that the other party was a nascent soul old monster. He had to make a personal appearance. Otherwise, Lu Ping wouldn't be able to handle it alone. He wasn't qualified. Very soon, Chen Jiu appeared in front of Bing Wuqing. He stepped forward and chuckled. Everyone says that Bing Wuqing of the Snow Sword faction is a super genius that no one has ever seen before and will ever see again. I didn't quite believe it in the past, but today I have no choice but to believe it. If I remember correctly, my young friend Wuqing is probably the youngest nascent soul expert in the history of the immemorial martial arts world. Congratulations, You flatter me. I'm not the youngest. The legendary figure of your faction, who is known as the Great Emperor, should be younger than me, right? Bing Wuqing asked seriously. Chun Jiu's smile immediately became a little awkward. He had said those words of praise just to warm up a little. Who knew that the other party would be so unreasonable as to directly refute him to his face? She was indeed young. I'd like to pay a visit to the immemorial martial granduncle Lin Yi of your faction. Just now he said that he needed you, the Grand Supreme Elder, to personally make a decision. I wonder if you can fulfill this small request of mine? Bing Wuqing went straight to the point. This. On the surface, he pretended to be hesitant, but in fact, Chun Jiu couldn't help but start cursing in his heart. Bing Wuqing was a hothead who didn't know the rules at all. Not only did she completely ignore the established rules of visiting, but even her tone was so stiff. How did this person suddenly become a nascent soul expert? However, cursing aside, Chun Jiu couldn't show it on his face. After all, the other party was an out-and-out nascent soul expert. Compared to her, even if he was a little stronger, he didn't dare to directly fall out with her. What if both of them were injured? Moreover, even if he could kill Bing Wuqing on the spot, he would definitely be severely injured. But don't forget, other than Bing Wuqing, there was another veteran nascent soul old monster in the Snow Sword faction. If he came looking for revenge, how was he going to deal with them? In the small immemorial underworld, every nascent soul old monster was equivalent to a nuclear weapon in the secular world. They definitely couldn't be attacked easily. Otherwise, a careless move could lead to a world war that wouldn't end until one side was wiped out. For every sect involved, that would be an unbearable disaster. You're the Grand Supreme Elder. Are you going to say that you don't have this authority? Bing Wuqing asked with a frown. Haha, my young friend, you must be joking. Of course I have this authority. However, it just so happens that Lin Yi is in seclusion at the Ascending Heaven Cliff right now. Even I can't rashly interrupt him. Otherwise, there might be unimaginable consequences. In my opinion, if my young friend really wants to see the immemorial martial granduncle, why don't you wait a little longer? Chun Jiu tried to beat around the bush. Wait. Bing Wuqing raised her eyebrows. That's right. My young friend, you've never been to the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island. During this period of time, you can travel around and experience the local customs of the North Island. When the immemorial martial granduncle comes out of seclusion, I'll send someone to inform you immediately. What do you think, my young friend? Chun Jiu suggested. Chapter 53-58. Broadcast follow Qijin reading and get the first-hand news of the 515 red packets. Students who haven't snatched red packets since the new year can now show their skills. In the eyes of an extremely pragmatic person like him, there was no such thing as sentimentality. He only cared about the pros and cons. As long as the pros outweighed the cons, he would act without hesitation. The reason why he didn't take any action now was because he hadn't figured out the situation yet, so he couldn't act rashly. After much persuasion, Bing Wuqing was finally persuaded to leave. Of course, she didn't really leave, but was just temporarily stabilized. Chun Jiu even specifically asked Lu Pingon to arrange an extremely secluded residence for her, afraid that she would do something out of control if she interacted with the ordinary disciples. After all, the destructive power of an original infant stage expert was not to be underestimated. Keep a close eye on him. If he does anything, report to me immediately. Chun Jiu exhorted. Initially, Lin Yi was his greatest threat, but now it had become Bing Wuqing. After all, the latter was a true nascent soul expert, and she was an existence that could truly threaten him. How do I keep a close eye on him? Lu Pingon's face was bitter. It would be fine if she was a golden core stage expert, but she was an original infant stage expert who could easily flatten him with one hand. How could he keep a close eye on her? You don't have to keep an eye on his every move. Just make sure that the other disciples of our sect don't come into contact with him. especially not let him get close to Skycliff. Chinjiu also knew that this request was a little too much, but it had to be done. He didn't know what the relationship between Bing Wuqing and Lin Yi was, but neither of them was easy to deal with. If they really joined forces, even Chinjiu would have a headache. Yes. Lu Pingan could only reluctantly agree. It was not very realistic for him to keep a close eye on Bing Wuqing with his strength, but he could change his way of thinking and keep an eye on those suspicious people who might get close to Bing Wuqing, such as Exionijia. Little did he know that when he and Chinjiu were delaying Bing Wuqing, Exionijia, who got wind of the news, had already gone to Skycliff and told Lin Yi about Bing Wuqing's visit in full detail. Not bad. Lin Yi smiled faintly after listening. Although Bing Wuqing's quick advancement to the nascent soul realm was somewhat unexpected, he did not find it strange. After all, he was the one who had given her the supreme grade golden elixir of condensing nascent soul realm. What he meant by not bad was actually the attitude that Bing Wuqing had displayed during this trip. She was showing her loyalty. Condensing the nascent soul so quickly is only not bad. Exionijia was dumbfounded. In the whole Green Cloud sect of the North Island, apart from Lin Yi, he was probably the one who knew Bing Wuqing the best. A year ago, she was at the early stage of Gold Core just like him. But in the blink of an eye, she had become a Yuanying realm old weirdo. How could he bear this? I mean, his attitude is not bad. Lin Yi explained. Even though he had long known that Bing Wuqing was someone who knew how to adapt to circumstances, this fellow had not become arrogant at all after she had formed her nascent soul. She was actually so obedient, which was really rare. It was obvious that all those elixirs had not been wasted. He's one of us. Exionijie's eyes widened when he heard this. He had been wondering why Bing Wuqing had to come to see Lin Yi, but now he suddenly understood. He looked at Lin Yi with even more awe. He could even tame a genius like Bing Wuqing. Granduncle was really unfathomable. That's right. Lin Yi nodded. Since Bing Wuqing had come to the North Island, there was no need to hide this kind of thing anymore. It was more meaningful to announce it openly. With such a powerful follower, not only could it greatly deter the enemies, but it could also improve their self-confidence and cohesion at the same time. It was killing two birds with one stone. Granduncle is mighty. As expected, Exionijia was very excited and sincerely admired Lin Yi. He felt lucky that he had bet on the right person. Since Lin Yi could even tame a Yuanying realm expert like Bing Wuqing, it would be a piece of cake for him to deal with Chenjiu, who is also a Yuanying realm old weirdo. He wouldn't have to be so worried in the future. Lin Yi looked indifferent. At his level, it would be too degrading for him to be excited about such a small thing. Granduncle, what should we do next? Should I contact Bing Wuqing? Exionijia asked in high spirits. Do you think you can contact her? Lin Yi glanced at him. It seems a little difficult. Exionijia felt like a bucket of cold water was poured over his head. He could easily figure out that Lu Pingan would do everything possible to prevent him from getting in touch with Bing Wuqing. Moreover, he wasn't strong enough to force his way in. It was easy to talk about contacting Bing Wuqing, but it was very difficult to actually do it. It's not urgent. Don't be impatient. Lin Yi smiled. Although they had been in a stalemate during this period of time, strictly speaking, they had always been the ones who had the upper hand. Now that Bing Wuqing was here, it was even more so. Chenjiu should be the one anxious now, not him, so there was no need to panic at all. They could just wait and see. All right. Exionijia was a little resentful. It was rare to have someone as powerful as Bing Wuqing here. He thought it was just the right time to wrestle with Chinjiu. For a native of the small Jianghu world like him, the deterrence of a nascent soul old monster was deep-rooted. Even though he had the upper hand in the situation before, he always felt frightened, and always felt that his side wasn't strong enough. Now that he finally had a nascent soul stage expert who was on par with him, his mood was completely different from before. Seeing this, Lin Yi couldn't help but laugh. He didn't expect that Exanigia, who had always been a good guy who only knew how to protect himself, would have a belligerent side. It was really unexpected. But then again, although the situation forced him to stand on the opposite side of Chinjiu, Lin Yi actually didn't want to make a big fuss. After all, his relationship with the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island was not fake. It would be best if it could be resolved peacefully. A few days passed in the blink of an eye. Bing Wuqing had stayed in the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island for a few days. Because of Lu Pingan's deliberate arrangement, she rarely interacted with the ordinary disciples of the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island, and had no chance to directly contact Exanigia. But with her strength, if she really wanted to do something, Lu Pingan couldn't stop her at all. If it wasn't for the fact that she didn't want to fall out with Chunjiu for the time being, Bing Wuqing would have already broken into climbing Heaven Cliff. Even if she chose not to move for the time being, it wasn't difficult for him to find out some news. After a few days, he had a general understanding of Lin Yi's situation. Judging from the current situation, although Lin Yi was trapped in climbing Heaven Cliff, he still had the upper hand in this confrontation with highest elder Chinjiu. At least Chinjiu didn't dare to do anything to him. However, Lin Yi also couldn't get out of the reaching Heaven Matrix. This was probably Chinjiu's only chance to win. Chapter 53-59. Broadcast. Follow Qijin reading and get the first-hand news of the 515 red packets. Students who haven't grabbed red packets since the new year can now show their skills. This result made Bing Wuqing feel a little more at ease. She had come all the way here in high spirits to show her loyalty to Lin Yi. If Lin Yi were to be killed by Chenjiu, that old man with his home advantage, that would be the end of her. However, although Lin Yi had the upper hand, it was not a solution to keep this stalemate. Bing Wuqing had already specially inquired about the one step to Heaven Matrix, and she knew that this matrix was extremely mysterious, and even a nascent soul realm old monster might not be able to break out of it. Although Lin Yi was unfathomable and no one could figure out his background, there was one thing that was certain. At least for now, this primordial spirit of his was far from the level of the nascent soul realm, and breaking out of the matrix would be as difficult as ascending to heaven. And if he didn't have the confidence to break the formation, this little initiative was just fleeting. Since he came to the Green Cloud sect in the North Island to show his loyalty, Bing Wuqing couldn't just wait and do nothing. If he didn't even get to see Lin Yi in the end, his trip would be in vain. Breaking into the Heaven Cliff by force was the worst option. Bing Wuqing didn't consider looking for Exanigia because she didn't know if he was on Lin Yi's side. There was only one thing she could do, and that was to look for Chinjiu. As an expert of the nascent soul stage, it wasn't difficult for Bing Wuqing to see Chinjiu. If Lu Pingan dared to refuse, he could force Chinjiu to show up with a simple threat. In fact, Lu Pingan didn't even need to be forced, because he had already asked Chinjiu to come out. After all, he wasn't a fool. After his personal experience last time, Lu Pingan knew very well that he had no room to bargain with Bing Wuqing, because they weren't at the same level. No matter what she asked, he just had to do it obediently, and Chinjiu would deal with it. Otherwise, if he really made a decision and annoyed Bing Wuqing, even Chinjiu might not be able to protect him. After staying in my North Island Blue Cloud sect for a few days, are you used to it, Wuqing? Chinjiu greeted him with a smile. It doesn't matter if I'm used to it or not. I'm here to meet your primordial grandmaster, not to sightsee. Bing Wuqing didn't give them any face as usual. Hee, little friend Wuqing, you really have a true temperament. You're still so straightforward with your words. Chinjiu laughed awkwardly. Nascent soul realm old monsters were the highest existences in the immemorial martial world, and there was a set of established rules and regulations when interacting with each other. Unfortunately, these things did not work on Bing Wuqing at all. To put it bluntly, the other party did not even know the rules in this regard, so what could one say about her? I'm not good with words. Please forgive me, Elder Qin, but there's something I'd like to ask again. When can I go to heaven, Ascending Cliff? Bing Wuching asked again. Didn't I say it last time? It depends on when Grand Master Lin he comes out of seclusion. I don't know the exact relationship between little friend Wuching and him, but he's the Grand Master of my primordial Blue Cloud sect after all, so I definitely have to think for his sake. I hope little friend Wuching can forgive me for this. Chunjiu put on a show of being considerate for Lin Yi. Is that so? But why did I hear the disciples of your North Island Blue Cloud sect talking in private, saying that Elder Qin and your Grand Master Lin you don't seem to be on good terms? Even your Qin family's most valued deputy sect leader Qin Dongqing was beaten up by Lin Yi. Am I right? Bing Wuching exposed him mercilessly. What? There's such a thing? Chunjiu pretended to be confused and glared at Lu Pinggan, who was beside him. Previously, he thought that this personal disciple of his was quite capable and could take on great responsibilities. But in the end, he couldn't even do such a small thing. He was also a good-for-nothing. Lu Pinggan smiled bitterly. These days, he had been trying to think of ways to prevent the disciples of his sect from having contact with Bing Wuching. But he couldn't stop the disciples from talking in private. The disciples of the Chen family's sect were fine, but the numerous local sects wouldn't be so obedient. With Bing Wuching's ability, as long as someone talked about her, she would naturally know. This matter couldn't be blamed on him at all. But since Chan Jiao was glaring at him, Lu Pinggan could only continue. He also pretended to be confused and said, "It can't be, right?" Although Grand Supreme Elder and Grand Master haven't officially met, that's because Grand Master has been busy with seclusion ever since he arrived. They haven't even seen each other, so how could there be any conflict? Then, what's the matter with Deputy Sect Leader Qin? Bing Wuching looked at the two's expressions. Oh, Deputy Sect Leader Qin isn't here at the moment. He's out on official business, so those discussions you've heard should be nonsense. Those disciples often talk nonsense in private. Please don't laugh at them. Lu Pinggan tried to fool him. Bing Wuching looked straight into his eyes, and Lu Pinggan didn't dare to meet her eyes at all. Slowly she said, "You're lying." Huh. Lu Pinggan was taken aback, but he quickly forced a smile and said, "Elder Bing, you must be joking. Everything I've said is absolutely true, and I'm not hiding anything." Bing Wuching didn't say anything. She was very sure that the other party was lying. However, since the other party refused to admit it, there was no way she could expose him face to face, unless she could find a witness to confront him or find Qin Dongqing. Unfortunately, neither of these two options were realistic. Looks like everything is clear now. It's just some disciples gossiping. You don't have to take it too seriously, my young friend Wuching. If there's any news about Grand Master Lin Yi, we'll definitely inform you immediately. Please don't be impatient. Qin Jiao finally stepped forward and said. At this point, Bing Wuching naturally couldn't say anything more. She immediately turned and left. After Bing Wuching left for a long time, Lu Pinggan finally breathed a sigh of relief. He said worriedly, "Master, this Bing Wuching isn't easy to fool. I'm worried that he'll stir up more trouble. The key is that he's in the nascent soul stage. I can't stop him even if I want to. What if he really does something out of line?" "What do you mean?" "Tell everyone to shut up. If anyone dares to gossip again, tell him to come and see me." Qin Jiu snorted coldly. "But what about Exionegia? Theoretically, no one in the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island, from the top management of the Golden Core stage to the ordinary disciples, whether they were from the Chen family's faction or the local faction, dared to disobey the order personally from Chunjiu, but Exionegia was an anomaly. This guy was obviously on Lin Yi's side. They were bound together for good or bad. How could he be frightened by Chunjiu's order? Humph, if he doesn't listen, you'll keep an eye on him. Chunjiu's eyes turned sharp. If it weren't for the fact that Qin Dongqing was caught, and if it weren't for the fact that he was afraid that Qin Dongqing wouldn't be able to be saved after falling out with Lin Yi, he would have asked someone to get rid of this reckless Exionegia long ago. Chapter 5360. Latest news. Tomorrow is 515, Qidian's anniversary celebration, the day with the most benefits. Apart from the gift bags and school bags, the 515 red packets must be searched. There's no reason not to snatch them. Set the alarm clock, yes. Lu Pingan's heart skipped a beat. He thought that he had disappointed Chunjiu again and again. If he couldn't even handle such a small matter, there would be nothing left to say. However, it turned out that stopping Xianijia from getting close to Bing Wuqing was not a small matter. Especially not a small matter. To be precise, it was not difficult to stop Xianijia from getting close to Bing Wuqing. But the key was, what if Bing Wuqing took the initiative to look for Xianijia? Bing Wuqing hadn't thought of this before, but after hearing the rumors, even an outsider could see that Xianijia was on Lin Yi's side. In this situation, if she wanted to get in touch with Lin Yi, the best way was to go through Xianijia other than to force her way through climbing Heaven Cliff. Lu Pingan couldn't stop them at all. He didn't dare to and couldn't stop them. He could only watch Bing Wuqing and Xianijia talk, unable to do anything. After hearing the news, Qinjiu, the Grand Supreme Elder, finally couldn't sit still anymore. He frowned and said, "What's the relationship between Bing Wuqing and Lin Yi?" Just to see Lin Yi, she flew thousands of miles from Middle Island to North Island. She couldn't get rid of him no matter how many times she tried, and now she won't leave. Is there an end to this? Both he and Lu Pingan had probed the relationship between Bing Wuqing and Lin Yi during their previous 2 meetings. Unfortunately, Bing Wuqing's mouth was tight and she didn't reveal anything. "Master, we can't go on like this. It's too dangerous to let such an unstable factor stay here. We have to find a reason to persuade her to leave as soon as possible," Lu Pingan said with a bitter face, facing a nascent soul cultivator like Bing Wuqing. He really didn't know what to do. He was completely led by the nose, and something would happen sooner or later. Do you think you can get rid of such a plague just because you want to? How could Chenjiu not want to get rid of Bing Wuqing as soon as possible? But with Bing Wuqing's attitude, if he was not allowed to see Lin Yi, how could he possibly leave? He won't stop until he reaches his goal. If he doesn't see Lin Yi, it's unrealistic to let him leave just like that. "Master, why don't we just let him go to Ascending Heaven Cliff?" Lu Pingan suggested. "Humph, you are too naive. Do you think he will leave obediently after seeing Lin Yi? With the current situation, if he really has a good relationship with Lin Yi, wouldn't he stay to help Lin Yi and make us have one more powerful enemy?" Chan Jiu scoffed at this suggestion. Release Bing Wuqing to see Lin Yi? Unless he was out of his mind, he wouldn't do something so stupid. If that happened, there would only be one outcome. It would definitely not be Bing Wuqing retreating obediently, but Lin Yi would be like a tiger that had grown wings. One Lin Yi was enough to render him helpless. If Bing Wuqing, who was in the nascent soul stage, was added to the mix, how could he handle it? "Master, actually, I don't think it's impossible," Lu Pingan said meaningfully. Chun Jiu frowned, but seeing that his expression was firm, he motioned for him to continue. "Master, putting Bing Wuqing aside, our negotiation with Lin Yi has already reached a stalemate. Deputy Sect Leader Chen's health condition is deteriorating day by day. We really can't drag this on any longer. We need to find a way to break out of this stalemate as soon as possible. And this Bing Wuqing just happens to be a good way to break out of this stalemate," Lu Pingan said. "Be more specific." Chen Jiu's interest was immediately piqued. "Yes, since it's a negotiation, there will always be concessions and compromises. I think we can make a concession and let Bing Wuqing see Lin Yi, but on the condition that Lin Yi can cure Deputy Sect Leader Chen," Lu Pingan said. "Do you think Lin Yi will agree?" Chun Jiu said, thoughtfully, "It depends on what he has in mind. Everyone knows that you're the stabilizing force of our Blue Cloud sect in the North Island. Without your approval, no one can gain a foothold here. So if Lin Yi wants to gain a foothold in our Blue Cloud sect in the North Island, he'll have to reach a compromise with you in the end. In that case, as long as he's given a suitable way out, he'll definitely choose to concede, Lu Pingon analyzed. But what if he has other intentions? Chun Jiu frowned. Since there's nothing left to say, then there's nothing more to say. No matter what, we can at least sound out the other party's attitude. In order to break out of this stalemate, we have to make the first move. What do you think, Master? Lu Pingon suggested carefully. They were already in a passive position, and now, with the addition of Bing Wuqing, there was nothing more to say. Since they had no choice but to make the first move, they might as well be straightforward and sound out the other party's stance. Chun Jiu pondered for a moment. Given Chen Dongqing's current state, it was indeed inappropriate to delay any further. In the end, he could only nod and say, "Then let's do it this way. You go and talk to them. But you have to remember that our purpose is not just to sound them out. The most important thing is to find a way to get Bing Wuqing away as soon as possible. As long as she's gone, everything else is our internal problem. We can talk about it however we want, and it's not impossible for me to meet Lin Yi in person." In other words, as long as they managed to get rid of Bing Wuqing, a huge external threat, then Lin Yi would not be able to escape from his palm, no matter how capable he was in the face of a supreme elder in the nascent soul realm. Understood. Lu Pingon immediately responded and left. Faced with Lu Pingon's concession this time, Exionijia was somewhat surprised and shocked. But after thinking about it, it made sense. After all, Bing Wuqing, a master in the nascent soul realm, had come all the way here to help. If Chun Jiu continued to insist, they would be the ones to suffer in the end. This time, of course, Exionijia would not evade it like before. Instead, he brought Lu Pingon to Lin Yi and asked him to talk to Lin Yi face to face. "Supreme Elder wants me to cure Chen Dongqing?" After listening to Lu Pingon's words, Lin Yi raised his eyebrows. "Yes, you also know that sect leader Hong is not here now, and now Deputy Sect Leader Qin is like this. There is no one in the entire Green Cloud sect who can take charge of the affairs, big or small. No matter what kind of differences there are between you and Supreme Elder, at the end of the day, you still have to think for the Green Cloud sect of the North Island, right? Such a big sect can't possibly have no one who can properly receive the guests from the outer gate, right?" Lu Pingon said earnestly. "What's the condition?" Lin Yi asked casually. Supreme Elder said that as long as you can cure Deputy Sect Leader Qin, he can choose to take a step back and let Bing Wuqing come here to see you. Lu Pingon said with a smile. "That's it." Lin Yi glanced at him with a faint smile. Of course, the condition that Lu Pingon got from Chun Jiu was not just this. Chapter 5361. Latest news: tomorrow was 515, Qidian's anniversary celebration, the day with the most benefits. Apart from the gift bags and school bags, this time's 515 red packets were definitely worth watching. There was no reason not to snatch the red packets. Set the alarm clock if it was just to let Bing Wuqing come up. From Lin Yi's point of view, it was not attractive at all. However, this was a negotiation, and he could not show his bottom line right away. That would be too stupid. If this is the only condition, and you don't even have the least bit of sincerity, then there's no need to talk anymore. "Elder Lu, please go back." Exionijia stood at the side and chimed in. "Don't be anxious. Before I came here, the Grand Supreme Elder said that after Bing Wuqing is sent away, he will personally appear and talk to you. When that time comes, he will definitely give you a satisfactory answer. What do you think?" Lu Pingon quickly added. To Lin Yi, it was more advantageous for Chun Jiu to appear personally than for Bing Wuqing to come up the mountain to meet him. This was because it was the only way he could prove his identity as the immemorial Grand Uncle Master, unless Chun Jiu turned against him. Of course, Lin Yi did not think too much of this. This was just Chun Jiu and Lu Pingon's one-sided wishful thinking. "There's no proof," Lin Yi said lightly. "Could it be that Grand Supreme Elder wants to make a written contract for you, Grand Supreme Elder?" Lu Pingon frowned. Haha, rather than believe in a written contract, I'd rather believe in a ghost. How about this? Let Bing Wuching come up to see me first, and we can talk about other things later. Lin Yi decided. This. Lu Pingon hesitated, then nodded and agreed. Okay, to show our sincerity, we'll take a step back first, but we'll wait for Grand Supreme Elder's reply next. His meaning was clear. If Lin Yi sent Bing Wuching away, then they could continue the next step of the negotiation. If not, then it would be equivalent to completely falling out, and there would be nothing to talk about. Fine. Lin Yi nodded. Even though he was trapped in the one step to heaven formation and could not get out, he had no intention of leaving Bing Wuching behind as a helper. Compared to this side, Lung Lung, who was left in the Snow Sword faction of the Middle Island, needed the protection of Bing Wuching, a nascent soul expert, more. After all, there was still a huge hidden danger in the form of Xue Jianfeng. In addition, he had another consideration. He was afraid that Bing Wuching would really fight with Chun Jiao on impulse. Although she was an expert of the Yuanyin realm, she had just broken through and her foundation was not stable. If that happened, it would not only mean that she would completely fall out with the Green Cloud clan of the North Island, but Bing Wuching would definitely be the one who would suffer losses. There would be no benefits. Lu Pingon was very efficient and brought Bing Wuching up in no time. Of course, Bing Wuching did not have an identity token, so she could only stand outside the one step to heaven matrix and talk to Lin Yi. Otherwise, he might not be able to get out after coming in. Boss Lin Yi, I'm relieved that you're fine. Bing Wuching breathed a sigh of relief when she saw that Lin Yi was safe and sound. Even though she knew that Lin Yi would not be defeated so easily by Chun Jiao, she was still worried that she could not see Lin Yi for a long time. Now, she was finally relieved. Hee, what could happen to me? Lin Yi smiled. He noticed the way she addressed him. It was obvious that she had learned it from Wu Chintian and the others. It seemed that this arrogant, immemorial prodigy had already recognized his own position. Their relationship was no longer one of mere coercion and exploitation. She had become his follower with sincerity. So what do you need me to do now? Help you break the matrix? Or deal with Chun Jiao directly? Bing Wuching did not have the habit of making small talk. Even if she wanted to express her loyalty, she was simple and direct. You don't need to do anything. Go back to the Snow Sword faction and look after Lung Lung for me. Just stay put for now, Lin Yi said. What about Xue Jianfeng? Bing Wuching could not figure out what Lin Yi was thinking. Things were different now. When he came to the North Island, he had openly betrayed the center. Naturally, there was no need for him to continue feigning civility. If it was not for the fear of disrupting Lin Yi's plan, he would have killed Xue Jianfeng directly and not let him live. If he doesn't move, you don't move either. No matter what he and the center do, your priority is to ensure the safety of Lung Lung and yourself. You don't need to worry about anything else for now, Lin Yi instructed. Okay, I understand. Bing Wuching understood. Even though Lin Yi did not reveal more, she had already understood what Lin Yi was thinking. If he didn't move for now, it meant that there would definitely be a big move with the center in the future. It was just that the time was not right yet. Oh, right. It's rare for you to come to the North Island. I can't let you make a wasted trip. As Lin Yi spoke, he called Xianijia, who was waiting at the side, and gave him 2 elixirs to pass to Bing Wuching. Thank you, big boss. Bing Wuching's eyes lit up instantly. Strictly speaking, the supreme grade gathering nascent elixir was his main purpose for coming to the North Island this time. Even though it was a little too realistic and even despicable to say it out loud, it was undeniable that it was the truth. To put it nicely, a person like him was extremely rational, but to put it bluntly, he was actually a mercenary. He just wasn't as short-sighted as the others. Lin Yi was well aware of this, but he did not mind. Since he had become someone's boss, he had to have a corresponding vision and tolerance. As long as Bing Wuching served him well, he would never choke her in the supply of elixirs. After all, as long as he could control her. The stronger Bing Wuching was, the better it would be for him. Putting away the 2 supreme-grade gathering nascent elixirs, Bing Wuching did not express her gratitude verbally. Instead, she solemnly bowed to Lin Yi, turned around, and left. Since Lin Yi had asked him to bide his time and take care of Lung Lung, then he would do it. Obviously, there was no need for him to meddle in the troubles of the North Island. From the beginning, he had predicted that a mere Chen Jiao would not be a problem for Lin Yi. With 2 supreme-grade gathering nascent elixirs, if everything went well, she could advance 2 levels in a short period of time and become a middle-stage nascent soul expert. Bing Wuching was looking forward to her future even more. Bing Wuching left swiftly. She didn't bid farewell to anyone when she descended from the ascending cliff. She rode on her snow eagle and disappeared into the horizon. All right, it's time to get down to business after dragging it out for so long. Lin Yi stretched himself. Until now, Exynegia was still in a daze. The 2 pills that he had just passed to Gu Lingji were too shocking. He was still in a state of shock until now. Those were the legendary supreme-grade gathering nascent elixirs. Before this, he was still very sure that Lin Yi was the Grand Master of his sect. Even if he was not, he must have a close relationship with the North Island's Green Cloud sect. But now he was really doubting it. What kind of monster was he to give away the supreme-grade gathering nascent elixirs so casually and 2 at once? A small sect like the North Island's Green Cloud sect would not be able to accommodate such a big shot, right? You want the elixirs too? Lin Yi glanced at him. Exynegia did not know how to react at that moment. Chapter 5362. Wasn't that obvious? Who wouldn't want elixirs? Forget about the legendary elixirs like the Gathering Nascent Elixir. He would be thankful to his ancestors for just 1 golden elixir. He had been stuck at the early stage of golden elixir all these years without making any progress. On the one hand, it was due to his innate aptitude, which was incomparable to a freak like Bing Wuching. But on the other hand, he wasn't that bad. He was at least at the intermediate level, and the reason why he couldn't advance was because of the elixirs. What could he do if he couldn't get golden elixirs? Here. Lin Yi tossed a few golden elixirs to Exynegia. After a period of observation, Exynegia had gained Lin Yi's approval. Moreover, Exynegia was going to be entrusted with important tasks in the future. Therefore, it was reasonable to give him some elixirs to strengthen his strength. No matter what, the strength of an early-stage golden elixir was not enough. His dream came true without warning. Exynegia was at a loss for what to do. It took him a long time to catch the golden elixirs, and he said gratefully, "Thank you, Grand Master." "No need. You deserve it. You can go and call someone," Lin Yi said. "Call who?" Exynegia was stunned. "Lu Pingon, of course. Now that Bing Wuching has been sent away as they wished, it's almost time for a showdown. That Grand Elder's patience should be running out by now, right?" Lin Yi said lightly. As a result, just as he finished speaking, there were people walking slowly towards climbing Heaven Cliff. One of them was Lu Pingon, who was carrying the unconscious Chen Dongqing on his back, and the old man walking in front of him was Grand Elder Qinjiu. Just as Lin Yi expected, this Grand Elder's patience had long run out. In fact, even without the unexpected interlude of Bing Wuching, he was already prepared to have a showdown with Lin Yi. After all, Chen Dongqing's current condition was not optimistic. When a person's primordial spirit was drained, their body would naturally begin to wither and even slowly die. Even powerful cultivators were no exception to this. Compared to ordinary people, the only difference was that their bodies were stronger and could last a little longer. There was no essential difference between the two. And now, Chen Dongqing was already on the brink of death. This unprecedented situation was something that even Chen Jiao could do nothing about. Once Chen Dongqing's body died, everything would be over. Even if his primordial spirit was still alive, it would only be a lonely soul, destined not to last long. The point was, how could the Chun family of North Island hand over such a big responsibility to a lone ghost? Without any greetings or words, Chun Jiu and Lu Pingon directly stepped into the one step to heaven matrix. The intention of placing Chun Dongqing, whose breath was extremely weak, in front of Lin Yi was obvious. Although the Supreme Elder personally came, he didn't put on a big show this time. Apart from Lu Pingon, he didn't bring any other disciples. After all, from his point of view, the fewer people who knew about his meeting with Lin Yi, the better it would be for him. You should have a way to cure Dongchen, right? Chun Jiu looked Lin Yi up and down. The two had been at each other's throats for a long time, but this was the first time they'd met face to face. Lin Yi's youthfulness was far beyond his expectations. At first glance, he was sure that this guy was definitely not the Archean martial granduncle, but a real young man. Of course. Lin Yi nodded. Then let's start the treatment, Chun Jiu said directly. Oh, aren't you going to talk about the conditions with me? Lin Yi raised his eyebrows when he heard the words, and Xi and Iji on the side also curled his lips. Even if the other party was the high and mighty Supreme Elder, after confronting for so long, he didn't have much power in his heart. He didn't even have the most basic conditions, and he directly asked someone to cure Qin Dongqing. Was he treating people like fools? What conditions do you want? Chun Jiu looked at Lin Yi with an inscrutable expression. Hee, I don't need any conditions. Just give me my identity token. That's all, Lin Yi said with a faint smile. This answer was not surprising. With the identity token, it was equivalent to receiving official recognition, including from the Supreme Elder. Lin Yi was the legitimate Archean martial granduncle. No one could question it anymore, and it was a matter of course. More importantly, with the identity token, he could freely enter and exit the ascending heaven cliff. The one step to heaven array would no longer be an obstacle that was difficult to overcome. For Lin Yi, this was the biggest benefit. If it was Lu Pingon, at this time he would definitely use the excuse of sect leader Hong Zijuan's absence. But now, Chun Jiu was standing here. If the dignified Supreme Elder had to use a mere sect leader as an excuse, no matter how reasonable it sounded, after all, he would still be at a disadvantage. If this spread out, he would be laughed at. If you cure Dongqing, I will give you the identity token. Chun Jiu's answer was straightforward. Although he had confirmed that Lin Yi was not the Archean martial granduncle, compared to Qin Dongqing's life, these were not important. Okay. Lin Yi's answer was also very straightforward. Previously, when Lu Pingon and Xenijia were their respective spokespersons, they were testing each other and wrangling with each other. After talking for so long, they still could not come to an agreement. Now that the two main characters personally came forward, the negotiation was a matter of a word. The process of treating Qin Dongqing was very simple. Qin Dongqing's primordial spirit, which was imprisoned in the space of the jade pendant, was released and returned to his physical body. However, the current Qin Dongqing's physical body was too weak. Even if his primordial spirit was intact, it could not easily recover in a short time. When the primordial spirit returned, the whole person was still in a half-dead state. The only difference from before was that there was a trace of indescribable temperament. Lu Pingon did not understand, but with Chun Jiu's eyesight, it was easy to see the difference between the two. Previously, Qin Dongqing was a piece of rotten wood that was constantly rotting, and there was no cure for it. Now, although he still looked like a piece of rotten wood, there was a glimmer of vitality. Next, as long as he was nursed well, it would not take long for him to return to normal. Well, it's your turn to fulfill your promise, Supreme Elder. Lin raised his eyebrows. That's right. Chun Jiu winked at Lu Pingon, signaling him to take the still unconscious Qin Dongqing away. After the two of them walked out of the range of the one step to heaven array, Chun Jiu slowly said, "Before that, this old man hopes that you can answer my question honestly." "Say it." Lin Yi's face did not show any abnormality. Chapter 5363. Lin Yi looked at him calmly. After a while, he grinned without any sincerity. I've already told you, he's your martial granduncle. Humph, looks like I won't be able to hear the truth. Chen Jiu's expression changed, and his aura became extremely sharp. For the first time, he released the aura of a nascent soul cultivator without holding back. Xianijia was taken aback. Facing the opponent's imposing manner, it was extremely difficult for him, an expert in the early stage of gold core, to even stand there. If it wasn't for Lin Yi standing next to him, he might have knelt down on the spot. After all, the power and terror of a nascent soul old monster was deeply rooted in the ancient Jianghu. What? Is Grand Elder going to go back on his word? Lin Yi's expression was still the same. He was not moved by the other party's aura at all. In his eyes, the so-called Yuanying stage old monster's aura was actually just like that. There was really nothing to be surprised about. It's not that I'm going back on my word. It's just that, as the old guy of the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island, I have to keep a close eye on this kind of thing. If I let some shady people in, I'll be criticized by others. Although Chen Jiu's tone was calm, his aura became more and more intense. It was obvious that he wasn't going to let this matter rest. To be precise, he didn't have this plan from the beginning. No matter whether Lin Yi, the primordial Uncle Master, was real or fake, he was destined to never let Lin Yi enter the Green Cloud sect of the North Island as he wished. After all, two tigers couldn't share one mountain. Apart from Chen Dongqing's concern, the other key reason why he didn't directly turn hostile for so long was that he didn't want to take risks before he figured out the strange means that Lin Yi had displayed before. Therefore, Chen Jiu had not been idle during this period of time. He had been searching for all sorts of information related to absorbing souls. Unfortunately, it was to no avail. This was not strange. Even if the primordial underworld had always focused on the cultivation of the primordial spirit, and there were all kinds of primordial spirit techniques, such as the soul reaping hand and the primordial spirit devouring technique, were unheard of. After all, the strongest among them was only a nascent soul old monster. This was the limit of his level. So what if he researched more? Without information, it meant that he had no confidence. That was why Chen Jiu had been patient, until today when his patience was completely exhausted. Of course, the unknown meant risks, but Chen Jiu didn't think that he would really fall into the hands of a mere Lin Yi. At most, it would be a little troublesome. He was a nascent soul cultivator. Naturally, he had the arrogance of a nascent soul cultivator. At the end of the day, it's still the same thing. Burning the bridge after crossing the river. As a grand elder, you change your attitude pretty quickly. Lin Yi didn't show any anger on his face. He didn't expect the other party to talk to him about honesty. If he really foolishly believed the other party's character, there was only one explanation. He was out of his mind. You can say whatever you want. Since you've chosen to challenge me, you should have been prepared for this. Isn't that right? Chen Jiu did not feel the slightest bit embarrassed. At his level, his face had long been honed to the point of perfection, so what was this? No wonder you're a nascent soul cultivator. You look like you're going to eat me alive. Very scary, Lin Yi said with a faint smile. You're about to die, but you're still quite stubborn. Chen Jiu replied with a cold snort. Listening to the conversation between these two people, Xianiji on the side was completely motionless. The two big shots were ready to do it themselves. What should a small fry like him do? Should he stay and help, or should he escape? In terms of helping, Xianiji knew that he couldn't help at all with his little strength. It would be good enough if he stayed and didn't help. But if he just ran away like this, not to mention that it would be hard to explain to Lin Yi he was still a gold core stage elder after all. He was still a person who cared about his reputation. Glancing at Xianiji, who was hesitating next to him, Chen Jiu suddenly said, I heard that you also brought a few disciples from the secular world with good qualifications. If you don't want to get involved, let them hide first. Don't worry, as long as they don't make trouble in the future, I won't take revenge. I still have this little bit of tolerance. This was the truth. Chun Jiao went back on his words to Lin Yi because Lin Yi had his weakness. Whether it was status or strength, Lin Yi had the potential to threaten him. To a certain extent, he could be considered as someone who was qualified to be his opponent. Of course, he could do anything at this time, but Ling Shan and the others were different. Although they were all Lin Yi's people, for a nascent soul cultivator like Chen Jiao, it would be too narrow-minded to even care about these people. Now, not only House Qin of the North Island, even the entire Jadian of the North Island was in a state of no successor. As long as he killed Lin Yi, Ling Shan, and the others would be a group of dragons without a leader. They wouldn't be a threat at all. Instead, they were all good prospects. The price was just to spend some time to train them. No need. Lin Yi's answer was straight to the point. In fact, until now, Ling Shan and the others hadn't shown themselves. They were all in their own rooms, practicing in isolation, not paying attention to the outside world. Oh, Chan Jiao couldn't help but be surprised. His lips curled into a mocking smile. You're so cruel to your own men? I've really underestimated you. What a character. The sky-climbing cliff was not a big place, and the area covered by the one step to sky-climbing formation was even smaller. Even if it was a fight between two ordinary gold core experts, it could easily sweep everything away. Now, if it was a nascent soul old monster like Chunjiu, he could easily destroy this place with just a wave of his hand. In other words, if these people, including Xianijia, stayed here, they would inevitably be implicated. With their strength, no one could leave this place alive. From Chunjiu's perspective, what Lin Yi did was equivalent to sentencing them to death. Cruel and merciless was absolutely appropriate. Cruel and merciless? Lin Yi smiled and looked at the nascent soul cultivator. I say, are you misunderstanding something, Grand Elder? Oh, Qin Jiu paused. I never planned to fight with you. Even if we were to fight face to face, I would at most make you follow in Chen Dongqing's footsteps. There's no need to go through so much effort. Lin, he said seriously. What? Even Chen Jiu couldn't help but be stunned by his tone. It was true that he still couldn't understand the strange method the other party used on Chen Dongqing, but he was a nascent soul old monster awe. Did this brat think that the same method would be effective on a nascent soul old monster? He was too naive. Chapter 53-64. Ha 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 ha. Interesting. Very interesting. Chun Jiu reacted and laughed. His powerful momentum suddenly became more and more wild and fierce. He laughed loudly and said, If you have the ability, then come and have a try. As he spoke, Chun Jiu took a light step forward. However, before he finished his step, his whole body swayed inexplicably, and then he had already crossed a distance of tens of feet and appeared directly behind Linny. The top body movement of the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island, half-step jump. This was not the end. At this moment, Chan Jiu's fingertip had already pointed at the back of Lin Yi's head. An extremely fierce energy chi instantly condensed into an invincible magic weapon and shot out. Instant kill. Xianijia, who was watching this scene from the side, suddenly had his heart in his throat. Half-step flip, followed by instant kill, such an attack was absolutely fast and lethal. In the face of an unknown opponent like Lin Yi, Qinjiu, a nascent soul realm old monster, did not underestimate his opponent at all. He was going all out, as if the person standing in front of him was a yuanying realm old monster from another sect, a strong enemy at the same level as him. Chun Jiu's attack was indeed fast, but unfortunately his opponent was Lin Yi. Even if he did not use the extremely fast body movement, he could easily avoid his instant kill in the state of half primordial spirit. As expected, Lin Yi just swayed slightly and easily avoided the instant kill. Your strength is really not weak. No wonder you are so arrogant. But you can avoid one. I wonder if you can avoid 10? Chun Jiu appeared above Lin Yi's head, condescendingly. At this moment, a powerful finger strength was shot out from each of his fingertips. It was the ultimate version of instant kill, 10 consecutive finger kill. 10 finger strengths interweaved into a dense killing net, completely covering Lin Yi, leaving him nowhere to hide. Hee, you are quite confident, aren't you? Lin Yi's voice, then, sounded above his head. How could it be? Chun Jiu suddenly turned pale with fright. He had clearly locked the position of Lin Yi with his divine consciousness. No matter how fast the opponent was, it was impossible for him to escape unscathed. How could he suddenly appear above him? What the hell was this? It was only at this moment that the nascent soul stage old monster suddenly reacted. Although he looked no different from an ordinary person, he was still a primordial spirit. Chun Jiu's reaction was fast. He wanted to get rid of it the moment he realized something was wrong. Unfortunately, he was still too slow. An invisible giant black hand had already enveloped his head. Chun Jiu's eyes quickly became empty in a short period of time, and then became completely lifeless. He then collapsed to the ground and no longer moved. The situation was exactly the same as Qin Dongqing before. Xianijia was dumbfounded. He was speechless for a long time. From his point of view as a bystander, this pinnacle battle really came abruptly, but it ended even more abruptly. In his expectation, even if Lin Yi was really an extraordinary existence, in order to kill a Yuanying stage old monster, he would at least have to go through a bitter battle. How could he kill him just like that? Was this still a powerful Yuanying stage old monster? What are you waiting for? Drag him out. Lin Yi glanced at him and ordered, Drag him out? Xianijia pointed at Chun Jiu on the ground with trepidation. Even if he was unconscious at the moment, he was still a superior Grand Elder. He was a Yuanying stage old monster who stood at the top of the small Jianghu in the primitive times. Since when could such an existence receive such treatment? What else can I do? Stay here and get moldy? Lin Yi had a strange look on his face. He seemed to be pointing at something and said, You know what to do next, right? What to do? Xianijia was still at a loss. Everything that happened today was too sudden. He was not mentally prepared at all. Lin Yi did not tell him anything about how to deal with it. He did not even know what to do at this time. Grand Elder was killed, and there is no news from the leader. Isn't it obvious what to do next? Of course, it's to take over the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island. It's rare for there to be such a big power vacuum. Don't tell me you want someone else to take over the power vacuum? Lin Yi looked at him and said, Before he came to the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island, he actually had no idea about the power inside the sect. The reason why he came to this point was that he was forced by the situation. If it were not for Chun Jiu and Qin Dongqing, Lin Yi would not mind getting along with them peacefully. But now, even Chun Jiu, the Grand Elder, had become like this. If he still did not take over the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island, it would be too hypocritical, no matter what. Since he planned to establish a foothold in the small Jianghu in the primitive times, the first thing was to smooth over the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island. Instead of letting others take over, for Lin Yi, the best candidate to take over was naturally Xianijia. As for himself, of course, he could not do it himself. He had to be a strong backer behind Xianijia. Otherwise, it would be a big trouble to appease the public opinion. After all, he was an outsider. Take over the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island? Do you want me to do it? Xianijia was completely stunned when he heard this. He was just an elder who ranked at the bottom of the early stage of Gold Core. He had never thought that he could defeat Qin Jiu, the Grand Elder, nor had he thought about taking over the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island. He did not even dare to think about it. Are you afraid that no one will obey you? Lin Yi saw through his doubts at a glance. Although Xianijia was a good person who put his own safety first, he could tell from the fact that he turned to Lin Yi without hesitation at the last moment that he was not a good-for-nothing. Deep down in his heart, there was a huge ambition. Exainegia was speechless. Was there a need to ask this question? With his little strength, it was difficult for him to rope in a few allies. As for taking over the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island, was that even possible? What's there to hesitate about? Drag this guy out. Who dares to obey you? Lin Yi pouted and pointed at Chun Jiao on the ground. That's right. Exainegia's eyes suddenly lit up. Of course, he was not persuasive alone, but the Grand Elder on the ground was enough to convince everyone. The saying, "the strong are respected," was not just an empty saying. Now that even the old monster in the Gathering Vitality realm was killed, who in the sect dared to be disobedient. Needless to say, the local factions had all kinds of complaints in the open and in the dark, but they did not dare to show it because of Grand Elder Qin Jiao's tyranny. If someone could stand up and take down Qin Jiao, even if they did not raise both hands to agree, most of them would not oppose it. After all, this was different from the invasion of foreign enemies. It was an internal struggle of the sect, an internal affair. Chapter 53-65. After all, the prestige of an old monster in the Yuanying realm was not just for show. They had the courage to go against Lin Yi before purely because they felt that he was just a swindler with no strength. To put it bluntly, the ignorant were fearless. In fact, after Chun Dongcheng was beaten up, these people basically began to quiet down. The only one who really jumped up and down was Lu Pinggan, and this was because he was negotiating for Chun Jiao's endorsement. Otherwise, even Lu Pinggan would not dare to be so active. After all, no one was a fool. Everyone knew that the bird that sticks out will be shot. Knowing that Lin Yi was not to be trifled with, who would dare to jump up and down. And now, Lin Yi proved that he was not to be trifled with real means. The previous Qin Dongqing was just a small test, and Chun Jiao was the one he wanted to get rid of. The whole process was easy. Thinking of this, Exainegia could not help but be excited. Although taking over the Green Cloud sect of the North Island still felt a little unreal. With the support of a big tree like Lin Yi, it was not completely impossible. But can I really do it with my little strength? Exainegia was still not very confident. Now, with the example of the Grand Elder, the effect of killing the chicken to warn the monkey was absolutely great. As long as there was the strength of a middle-stage gold core realm, Exainegia believed that he could control the overall situation. But the problem was that the strength of an early-stage gold core realm was a little too weak. It's not enough, so I have to come out in person to control the situation. That's enough, Linny said. You'll come out in person? Exainegia was shocked. Even Qin Jiao was easily beaten, half to death. If Lin Yi came out in person, the deterrent effect would be obvious. Not to mention the high-level gold core realm and ordinary disciples in the sect. Even another old monster in the Yuanying realm would have to think twice. But the problem was, could Lin Yi go out? Don't forget, this was still in the one step to heaven formation. Even if Qin Jiao, the Grand Elder, was easily killed, it did not mean that Lin Yi could break out of the formation. This was completely different. The only way to break the one step to heaven formation was to achieve 4 words. 1 step to heaven. Yes, so you can go and gather people. I'll be right there. Lin Yi smiled confidently. Then, all right. Exainegia nodded heavily. Since Lin Yi had said so, he naturally had no reason to doubt it. He immediately dragged the unconscious Qin Jiao out. He watched Exainegia leave. Lin Yi closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Then he slowly stretched his hand forward until he touched the invisible barrier. The corners of his mouth curled up. 1 step to heaven array. After studying it for so long, I should be able to get out, right? During this period of time, Lin Yi's efforts were not limited to cultivating his spirit power and the soul-hooking hand. How to break through the 1 step to heaven matrix had always been one of the biggest problems in front of him. After all, he had never expected Qin Jiao and the others to obediently hand over their identity tokens. Of course, it was okay if they really couldn't break through. Now that the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island was leaderless, It shouldn't be too difficult for Exanigia to find a way to get an identity token. However, it was rare to encounter such a mysterious formation. If he couldn't break through by himself, but was forced to take the back door, would he still be Lin Yi? In theory, the only person who could really break through the one-step to heaven matrix was the legendary figure of the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island, who was called the Great Emperor. After all, this was the formation he set up himself. Other than that, no one else had ever heard of it. According to Exanigia, even a Yuaning realm old monster like Chunjio had never really broken through the one-step to heaven matrix. He had never really broken through the one-step to heaven matrix, and he rarely made such an attempt, because that was the domain of legendary figures. But now, Lin Yi was finally going to be the first person to try it. His fingertips touched the formation. In an instant, Lin Yi once again felt that mysterious feeling of being so close yet so far away. After this period of continuous fumbling, he wasn't unfamiliar with this feeling at all. In order to cross this barrier that was so close yet so far away, he'd thought of no less than 100 methods, but all of them had failed in the end. It wasn't entirely a problem of thinking. The main shackle was actually the strength itself. If one didn't have the strength beyond the Yuaning realm, it was impossible to break through the one-step to heaven matrix. This was probably the original intention of the legendary Great Emperor when he set up the one-step to heaven matrix. Originally, even if Lin Yi realized this, he would be helpless. However, because of the large amount of divine sense grassroot, regardless of the strength of the primordial spirit body, his primordial spirit was already a level higher than when he first came to the small ancient Jianghu. In terms of level alone, it had even recovered to the level of the original body on the Heaven Stage Island, a real mysterious ascension stage. If not, the power of his soul-hooking hand would not suddenly become so strong, and even a Yuaning realm old monster like Chunjio could easily deal with it. For the small ancient Jianghu, which was used to the peak of the Yuaning realm, the current Lin Yi was undoubtedly a monster, a terrible monster who could easily pierce through the entire ceiling. With one step, Lin Yi instantly switched from the primordial spirit body to the primordial spirit form, and then quickly condensed into a very thin and long primordial spirit thread. If the onlookers had enough eyesight, they would find that this form was almost the same as when the primordial spirit projection was used. That's right, this was the countermeasure that Lin Yi came up with. Although the one-step to heaven line was mysterious, but after all, it was not comparable to the real cross-realm projection. The difficulty of this did not lie in whether the primordial spirit projection could cross the one-step to heaven line, but whether Lin Yi could successfully cast the imitation version of the primordial spirit projection. Even if it was just a simple imitation, even if the effect was only 1% or even 1,000th of the original, the difficulty of this was not trivial. One must know that the primordial spirit projection could only be successful by relying on a special formation, but now it was purely relying on Lin Yi himself. This level of difficulty was something that only Lin Yi himself could understand. One moment in reality, but to Lin Yi it felt like a long time had passed. The next moment, an almost undetectable primordial spirit thread appeared on the other side of the formation, and it grew at a speed visible to the naked eye, slowly condensing into Lin Yi's silhouette. One step to heaven, achieved. Boss, are we leaving? Qin Tian's voice came from behind. Ling Shan and the others poked their heads out as well, all of them looking excited. While the battle between Lin Yi and Chunjio didn't take much effort, and they didn't make much noise, it would be a lie to say that they didn't notice anything at all. They were training in isolation on the surface, but they were actually eavesdropping. Chapter 5366. Okay. The crowd cheered and followed him. Dong! 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 The deep sound of the ancient bell spread all over Mount Qinyan. All the people of the Green Cloud sect in the North Island, from the elders in the Gold Core stage to the ordinary disciples, changed their faces when they heard the bell. They stopped what they were doing and quickly gathered in the main hall from all directions. Something big must happen when the Green Cloud bell rang. Everyone must gather as soon as possible. This was the rule of the Green Cloud sect in the North Island. What happened? The group of pupils looked at each other. If there was no major change, the Green Cloud bell would not be easily rung. Could it be that something major had happened? Chun Jiao and Lin Yi's personal negotiation was very secretive. Almost everyone was kept in the dark and didn't know what happened. Even Lu Pingan was very surprised. He didn't see the fight between Chun Jiao and Lin Yi. In fact, when Chun Jiao asked him to carry Qin Dongqing away, he had already left Dangtian Cliff first, so he didn't know what happened after that. It doesn't make sense. Master clearly said to deal with it coldly. Even if he killed Lin Yi, there's no need to ring the Green Cloud bell, right? Lu Pingan was confused. He still thought that Qin Jiao could easily kill Lin Yi. After all, he was a real Yuaning realm old monster. How could he lose to a primordial spirit of unknown origin? Lu Pingan didn't understand, and the others were even more confused. When they saw the figure standing on the side of the Green Cloud bell, they were even more surprised. Exainegia, what the hell are you doing? Lu Pingan suddenly frowned. The rest of the Gold Core Stage seniors were also dissatisfied. The Green Cloud bell was not something that anyone could touch. At least, it had to be at the level of the deputy head. Exainegia, who was at the bottom of the ranking, was not qualified to touch it at all. If it was in the past, Exainegia would have been scared to the point that his legs were weak when he was surrounded by so many people. Today, although he was still a little nervous, he didn't panic at all. After all, he knew better than anyone that from today on, it was a new era of the Green Cloud sect in the North Island. I didn't do anything. Because there is an emergency. I rang the Green Cloud bell to gather everyone. Exainegia said calmly. Do you think you're qualified? Don't you think too highly of yourself? A Golden Core Stage elder from the Qin clan snorted disdainfully. Exainegia, don't tell me you don't know the crime of ringing the Emerald Cloud bell without permission. Lu Pingan sneered and then added, Speaking of which, what kind of urgent matter could you have? Could it be that the archaic martial granduncle died? He had long believed that Lin Yi would die in Chen Jiao's hands, so Lu Pingan's words were much more unscrupulous than before. No way. Isn't that impostor imprisoned on this Sending Heaven cliff? She can't just smash her head against the wall and die, right? The bystanders deliberately echoed. The higher-ups and disciples of other local sects looked at each other. Recently, Exainegia had been trying to rope them in, but there were only a few who responded. Apart from being afraid of the Grand Supreme Elder's power, there was another rumor that made them waver. That archaic martial granduncle seemed to be an impostor. Exainegia glanced at them, cleared his throat, and said, As for whether archaic martial granduncle Lin Yi is an impostor, there will be no more suspense from today onwards. Oh, is it because he's dead? Lu Pingan curled his lips indifferently. In his eyes, Lin Yi was now a dead man. Everyone was looking at Exainegia, but he grinned and pointed to an empty space beside the Green Cloud bell. There was a piece of white cloth covering it, and there was a human figure under the white cloth. He's really dead. Lu Pingan was even more certain now. He believed that Lin Yi's body must be under the white cloth, because only a dead body could be taken out of the one step to heaven matrix. You can say that. Exainegia smiled faintly, then faced the crowd and said, I think it's necessary to explain to everyone about what happened at the Heaven Cliff today. Elder Lu, you won't stop me from saying it, right? Humph, what's there to say? Lu Pingan snorted coldly. Not knowing the truth, he was still trying to keep a low profile. He changed the topic and said, Speaking of which, Exainegia, you're quite bold. It's just the death of an impostor of unknown origin. How dare you ring the Green Cloud bell to gather all the disciples? How should you be punished? But Exainegia paused for a moment, then said with a smile, What if the person lying here isn't archaic martial granduncle Lin Yi? What do you mean? Lu Pingan did not react for a moment. What I mean is, Exaion suddenly moved forward and lifted the white cloth. When they saw the face of the person lying on the ground, everyone was shocked. As for Lu Pingon, his face turned pale, and he almost fainted on the spot. Now that it's the Grand Supreme Elder who's in trouble, it shouldn't be too much for me to ring the green cloud bell, right? Exaion said calmly. No one said anything because they couldn't speak, because their jaws were on the floor. After a long time, Lu Pingon's stuttering voice was heard. How could this be? The person lying on the ground was not Lin Yi, but Chen Jiao. How could this be? No way. Could it be that nascent soul realm old monsters from other sects are here? Those who did not know the reason were still shocked. In their minds, only nascent soul realm old monsters could defeat nascent soul realm old monsters, such as Bing Wuching from Snow Sword Sect, who just left not long ago. No. The Grand Supreme Elder questioned the identity of archaic martial Granduncle Lin Yi. So he was beaten up by archaic martial Granduncle Lin Yi. It's as simple as that, Exaion said lightly. After that, the whole place fell into dead silence again. The Grand Supreme Elder was beaten up? This would definitely be a big joke in the past, but at this moment no one could laugh because Chen Jiao was lying in front of them. This was an ironclad fact. Even so, the crowd still felt that the scene in front of them was too unbelievable. Could it be an illusion? Deceiving so many people with an illusion was undoubtedly a fantasy story, but killing Chen Jiao, a nascent soul realm old monster, without making a sound was also a fantasy story. The credibility of the two was not much different to the crowd. Chapter 5367. Lu Pingon stared blankly at Chen Jiao on the ground, as if he didn't feel anything. The other elders and disciples of the Chen family faction were also at a loss. Below Grand Elder Chen Jiao, except for the deputy head Qin Dongqing, Lu Pingon's position was the highest. At this moment, even he was stunned, let alone the others. The silence of Lu Pingon and the others finally gave all the other elders and disciples a clear signal. They all showed strange excitement on their faces. This meant that the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island would usher in a new era from today. A new era was not good news for the Chen family faction, which had been used to being superior. But for the local faction, which had more people, it was undoubtedly a sign of a turnaround. Before this, they had all witnessed Exaion efforts to build momentum. However, the effect was negligible. After all, a primordial grand uncle master of unknown origin could overpower Supreme Elder Chen Jiao. Those who would believe in such a ridiculous story were basically out of their minds. But now, they finally knew that Exaion was not brainless, but they were just frogs in a well. Exaion took in everyone's expressions. To be honest, his legs were still trembling until just now. But now, after seeing everyone's different expressions, he suddenly felt at ease. Although the people of the Chen family faction were hostile, they were obviously stunned. They were like a group of dragons without a leader in a short period of time. It was destined that they would not make any big trouble. As for Lu Pingon, this guy wanted to raise his arm and call for help. Unfortunately, he was Chen Jiao's pro-disciple, but not a real member of the Chen family faction. This was a natural shackle that could not be overcome. He was still far from being able to call for help. As for the local faction, because there was no news from the head Hong Zijuan, they were now like a group of dragons without a leader. The key point was that they were not hostile to Lin Yi, who could overwhelm Grand Elder. At this moment, they were all full of awe. Even if there were a few people with ulterior motives, they dared not jump out to challenge Exaion before they figured out the situation. It was the wisest choice to wait and see. Very well, now that times have changed, some untimely rules should be changed. The North Island Blue Cloud sect belongs to everyone. From now on, Green Cloud sect of North Island, which is not a single sect, can't put one sect first in everything. Everyone has to follow the rules, and there will be no privilege. Exaion seized the opportunity and said. As soon as he said that, many of the disciples of the local sects immediately cheered. If one were to say who had suffered the most from the Qin family's faction, it would be none other than them. Although there were not many people in the Chen family faction, they relied on the huge halo of Grand Elder Qinjiu. Over the years, as long as it involved good things such as cultivation resources, they would receive preferential treatment without exception. They got the meat, and the disciples of other local factions got the soup. Sometimes they didn't even get the soup, so they didn't dare to say anything even though they were angry. Today, Xianijia called for the abolition of the privileges of the Chen family. This was undoubtedly a move to win the hearts of the people. It was simple, but extremely effective. I'd like to ask Elder Xan, which family do you mean by one? At this time, a voice suddenly interrupted the cheers of the crowd. Everyone's eyes suddenly focused on this person. After seeing the person clearly, Xianijia's pupils suddenly shrank. Qin Dongcheng, his primordial spirit had left his body for too long, so much so that his body had shown signs of atrophy. Normally, it would take at least a month for him to fully recover. It was a miracle that Qin Dongcheng could stand out at this time. Of course, it's the Chen family of North Island. Xianijia immediately responded, tit for tat. Although he didn't have the slightest confidence to fight against Qin Dongcheng, the deputy sect leader, now that Chen Jiu was killed by Lin Yi, what else did he have to be afraid of? Everyone from the Chen family's faction heard it, right? Times have changed. Even a small character like this who doesn't even count as a fart wants to ride on top of our heads. Do you agree? Qin Dongcheng sneered and took the lead to provoke in public. Hearing this, Xianijia panicked. The reason why these people in the Chen family faction gave up before was that they were collectively confused. The main reason was that no one took the lead. Now that Qin Dongcheng suddenly appeared, the situation would definitely go out of control. As expected, when Qin Dongcheng took the lead to provoke, the other people in the Qin family faction all changed their expressions. Although they were afraid of Lin Yi, who could kill Qinjiu, the person standing in front of them was just a good guy in the early stage of the Gold Core realm, Xianijia. What was there to be afraid of? Hey, you guys have to think carefully. What I just said was personally ordered by Grandmaster Lin Yi. Are you sure you want to disobey him in public? Xianijia quickly brought up Lin Yi. Grandmaster Lin Yi, right? We're so scared. Qin Dongcheng deliberately pretended to be frightened, but then he ridiculed. Yes, I admit that your Grand Master Lin Yi is indeed unfathomable, but is that useful? Come on, tell me. How is your Grand Master Lin Yi going to get out of the sky-reaching formation? This was why Qin Dongcheng was able to stand up and challenge them. That's right, they didn't dare to face Lin Yi now, but wasn't there still the one step to heaven matrix blocking them? Since Lin Yi couldn't come out, what was there to be afraid of? This. Xianijia choked for a moment. In fact, he had thought about this, but Lin Yi gave the order in a hurry, and he was too excited, so he neglected it. Hee, you can't be thinking that you can secretly get him an identity token without us knowing, right? Qin Dongcheng sneered. It would not be difficult for Xianijia to get an identity token for Lin Yi if there was no leader just now. But now that he was the vice leader, nothing could be done. Qin Dongcheng sneered. The Supreme Elder had fallen, and there was no news from the leader. The person with the highest position was Qin Dongcheng, the deputy leader. Most importantly, he was not just a deputy leader in name only. He was the leader of the Qin clan. Unless Lin Yi came in person, the others could only bow their heads in front of him. Xianijia was depressed. It was hard to stabilize the situation, but he did not expect this guy to wake up halfway. What should he do? What? Weren't you in the limelight just now? Elder Xian, it's not appropriate for you to give up so soon, right? That granduncle Lin Yi of yours is still waiting for your good news at the Sky Cliff. It's not good to let him wait anxiously like this, right? Qin Dongcheng ridiculed him again and again. The others looked at each other. Xianijia was really far behind Qin Dongcheng. In just a few words, the other party had taken control of the situation. Chapter 5368. Especially in the current situation, if Exionegia directly confronted this guy, it would be a mess immediately. If these people from the Chun family really made a fuss, they might not listen to him even though there were many people in the local faction. Maybe they were waiting to see him make a fool of himself. The situation was getting out of control. At this time, a faint voice suddenly interrupted. "Vice Leader Qin, who are you talking about?" Qin Dongqing was still pretending to be calm, thinking that Lin Yi couldn't get out of the one step to heaven formation, so he still had a chance to turn the situation around. At this time, after hearing this voice, his legs suddenly went soft, and he almost fell to the ground. How did you get out?" Chan Dongqing looked at Lin Yi and his people who were slowly approaching, and he was instantly covered in a cold sweat. He was definitely the one who had the deepest experience of the fear of Lin Yi. The others were just shocked that Lin Yi could actually kill an old monster in the Gathering Vitality realm, but he was the only one who had experienced it personally. "You're curious?" Lin Yi smiled and glanced at the others, who were just as shocked. He said casually, "I even took care of your Grand Elder with ease. Do you really believe that a mere one step to heaven formation can trap me? I didn't come out before because I was playing with you." Everyone fell silent. At this time, no one dared to look at Lin Yi, and this was the effect Lin Yi wanted. If he wanted to control the Green Cloud sect of the North Island, then what he had to do now was not to appease them, but to establish his power. From the moment Qinjiu was killed, the rules of the whole Green Cloud sect of the North Island were destined to be remade, and this person could only be Lin Yi. "What are you guys doing?" "Greet Grandmaster." Exionegia took the opportunity to give everyone a wink. "Greetings, Grandmaster." All the people present immediately knelt down, from the elders in the gold core stage to the ordinary disciples. No one was an exception, whether it was the local faction or the Chun family's faction. Even Qin Dongqing and Lu Pingan, the two absolute henchmen of Qinjiu, knelt down at this time. They had no choice. The situation was beyond their control. If they dared to disobey, Lin Yi absolutely wouldn't mind killing them again to warn others. Even Chunjiu was killed, let alone the two of them. Lin Yi glanced at the two of them and felt a little pity in his heart. He really didn't intend to keep these two people. Although they weren't a threat to him, they were at the peak of the late stage of Jindan stage and the middle stage of Jindan stage. In addition, with the connections of the Qin family in the North Island, it would be more or less troublesome if they did something bad behind his back. It was a shame that the two were smart enough to stop causing trouble, not giving Lin Yi an excuse to deal with them. They didn't give Lin Yi an excuse to deal with them. Although he wanted to establish power and remake the rules when there was no sufficient reason, even Lin Yi couldn't kill people casually. That would make the whole Green Cloud sect of the North Island panic, and it wouldn't end well. "Well, get up." Lin Yi looked at the people kneeling on the ground. "Thank you, Grandmaster." Everyone got up one after another, and all of them were in fear and trepidation. Today, Lin Yi was a terrible existence above Qinjiu, the highest elder. They were nervous and frightened even in front of Qinjiu, and naturally they were even more nervous now. The most important thing was that they didn't know what kind of temper Lin Yi had. Was he kind and reasonable, or a bloodthirsty tyrant? If it was the former, it was good news for everyone, especially for the disciples of the local sections. But if it was the latter, it was hard to say whether it was a blessing or a curse. It was better to speak less before figuring out the situation. At this time, honest people wouldn't suffer losses. Let me tell you something. The North Island's Green Cloud sect is such a big sect that it can't be without a leader for a day. Now the highest elder is gone, and there's no news from the leader. We need someone to stand up and preside over the affairs. After all, I can't do it, can I? Lin Yi said. Everyone looked at each other, and their eyes involuntarily fell on Qin Dongqing. Logically speaking, he was the most qualified candidate. Qin Dongqing suddenly felt like he was sitting on pins and needles. He couldn't wait to hide now. What he feared most was being targeted by Lin Yi. How could he dare to jump out and fight for power at this time? Even if he wanted to die, he shouldn't do it this way. Well, the position of the leader can't be left vacant. Let's take this opportunity to change the leader. I suggest Exainegia. Lin Yi said directly. It was in the plan to let Exainegia preside over the affairs of the sect. Although it was a bit abrupt to bring it up rashly, and Exainegia's original status and strength were far from enough. With Lin Yi's current deterrent power, who dared to say no? Sure enough, the crowd did not dare to oppose him directly. However, their expressions were a little strange. Although Exainegia was an elder in the gold core stage, it was like ascending to heaven in a single bound when an elder ranked at the bottom of the ranking suddenly became the sect leader. No one objects? Then it's settled. Lin Yi did not want to talk nonsense with them at all. He simply made a decision. Anyway, with him suppressing them, no one dared to oppose. It would be fine when they got used to it. The crowd was speechless. The saying, "the strong are respected," was true. No matter what decision Lin Yi made, they would not dare to show it even if they were dissatisfied. Moreover, they were familiar with Exainegia's character. Although they were dissatisfied, it was not a bad thing for most of them to let such a good guy take the position. They could reluctantly accept it. "Thank you, Grand Uncle Master. I will do my best and go through fire and water." Exainegia suppressed the ecstasy in his heart and shed tears of gratitude. It was true that he was a good man who put his own safety before things went awry, but he was also an ambitious one. Of course, he would never have dreamed that he would one day become the leader of the sect. However, ambition would grow. "All right, then I'll leave the rest to you. If there's anything, look for me at Climbing Heaven Cliff." Lin Yi did not stay any longer. He only needed to show his face in front of everyone today to shock them. As for how to deal with the aftermath, it was Exainegia's business. If Exainegia could not even handle this well, it would mean that he was in a difficult position and he would have to find someone else. As expected, Exainegia's performance did not disappoint Lin Yi. Although his strength was only at the early stage of the gold core stage, this good guy's ability to handle affairs was not to be underestimated. In just a few days, he had calmed the restless people and successfully gained the support of some of the local leaders and disciples. Of course, there was still a long way to go before he could really control the overall situation. However, it was a very gratifying step for Exainegia. With the protection of Lin Yi, he would become the real leader of Green Cloud sect in the North Island sooner or later. Chapter 5369. He had been missing for half a year. Before that, Exainegia hoped more than anyone else that the former head could come back to take charge of the situation. But now, everything was different. If Hong Zijuan came back, what should he do as the new head? Should he continue to be the head, or should he abdicate and return it to its rightful owner? If this matter was not handled well, the situation that Exainegia tried so hard to stabilize might be on the verge of losing control again. If the local faction split because of this, and the Chen family's faction fanned the flames again, things might get out of hand. The one who had the power to decide who should be the head was not the disciples of the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island, but Sky Climbing Cliff. Is this Hong Zijuan? Lin Yi sized up the middle-aged man brought by Exainegia. His face was fair and beardless, and he looked honest and refined. His gestures occasionally revealed the aura of a superior, but it was not obvious. Instead, there was a hint of haggard and disheveled. "Greetings, Grand Uncle Master." Hong Zijuan hurriedly bowed to Lin Yi. He did not act like a head at all in front of Lin Yi. He was not a fool. Lin Yi even killed Qinjiu, the highest elder, without hesitation, let alone a weak head like him. Most importantly, things were different now. Nominally, Exainegia had become the new head of the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island, and he was appointed by Lin Yi in public. It was a great risk for him to come back at this time. If Lin Yi and Exainegia felt that he was an eyesore, he would not end up well. Although Exainegia was a good person, and Hong Zijuan had helped Exainegia before, it was about the head's position. Even brothers would fight to the death. Of course, the final decision was not up to him and Exanija, but to Lin Yi. You've been missing for so long. Where have you been? Lin Yi looked at him and asked. I'm ashamed to say that I've been hiding outside for the past half a year and dared not to come back. If I came back, I would be dead. Hong Zijuan smiled bitterly. Why? Lin Yi and Exanija looked at each other. As the head of a sect, Hong Zijuan's strength was certainly not weak. He was a real master in the peak of Gold Core. Moreover, he was in the territory of Green Cloud sect on the North Island. How could his life be in danger? That's because the person who wanted to kill me was Grand Elder Qinjiu. If it wasn't for my mount desperately protecting me and delaying me for a moment, I would have been a dead man. Hong Zijuan still had a lingering fear when he talked about this matter today. No one would have thought that his own sect's Grand Elder would actually directly make a move against his own sect's head, and there was only one purpose, which was to pave the way for Qin Dongqing. No wonder we haven't heard from him for half a year. Lin Yi nodded. That made sense. Since Hong Zijuan had taken action, as long as Qinjiu was there, Hong Zijuan wouldn't dare to come back to Green Cloud sect in the North Island. That would be courting death. That was why he suddenly showed up at this time. After all, Qinjiu had been killed by Lin Yi. For him, the biggest threat had disappeared. As the head of a sect, it was impossible for him to wander outside all the time. No matter what, he had to return to Green Cloud sect in the North Island. As the head of a sect, I only cared about my own safety. It's a great dereliction of duty. Please punish me personally, Grand Uncle. Hong Zijuan respectfully took the initiative to ask for forgiveness, and his attitude was very proper. It's not necessary. It's pardonable. Lin Yi waved his hand indifferently, but the way he looked at Hong Zijuan was a little more playful. This guy clearly knew that Lin Yi let Exanija take his position, but from his attitude at this moment, he didn't complain or resent at all. Instead, he seemed to have accepted it. Of course, Hong Zijuan didn't have the guts to question Lin Yi. It wasn't hard to understand, but it was a little interesting that he took the initiative to ask for forgiveness with such a proper attitude. Thank you for your understanding, Grand Uncle. But it's a fact that I haven't done anything in the past 6 months. As the head of a sect, I haven't been in contact with anyone for so long. I'm really not qualified to be the head of a sect, and I don't have the face to continue being the head of a sect. Therefore, this important task can only fall on the shoulders of sect leader Exan. Don't worry, Grand Uncle. I'll do my best to cooperate with you and Green Cloud sect in the North Island. I'll go through fire and water to protect you. Hong Zijuan hurriedly showed his loyalty. This guy was quite smart. Lin Yi suddenly understood why Hong Zijuan came. He knew that the matter was settled, and he didn't want to get himself killed for a sect leader's position that had already become a castle in the air. Therefore, he took the initiative to clarify himself. Apart from other things, this guy really knew how to adapt to circumstances. If that's the case, then how about this? You can be the vice head from now on. You have experience and strength. We still need your help on Exanija's side in the future. I hope there will be no more factional disputes in Green Cloud sect in the North Island. I don't want to hear about anyone stirring up trouble. I have high hopes for both of you. Don't let me down. Lin Yi looked at the two of them and said, Yes. Both of them were overjoyed. Exanija was overjoyed because he had truly secured the position of the head. As for Hong Zijuan, it was already a great thing for him to get Lin Yi's approval. Moreover, although he lost the position of the head, at least he could be the vice head. This was already a pleasant surprise, and there was nothing to be dissatisfied about. Back then, he was bullied so miserably by Qinjiu. This in itself had already proved that Hong Zijuan wasn't a tough person. If Qinjiu didn't want his life, he would have chosen to swallow his anger. Now that it was Lin Yi who was even more terrifying, his choice to lower his head seemed unexpected. But in fact, it was completely reasonable. Very good. Lin smiled. He had no choice but to push Exionegia into the position of the head because he was only familiar with Exionegia and the whole Green Cloud sect in the North Island. He wouldn't rest assured if someone else took the position. However, it was a little unrealistic for Exionegia to really control the overall situation in a short period of time. Hong Zijuan came at the right time. By the way, Marshal Granduncle, there's one more thing I need to report to you. Exionegia paused and said with a bit of shame, Qin Dongqing and Lu Pingon both ran away, and they took Qin Jiu's body with them. Now, Qin Jiu's primordial spirit had been trapped in the space of the jade pendant by Lin Yi, and the rest of his body was no different from a corpse to others. Got it. Lin Yi didn't comment on this. In his opinion, it wasn't entirely a bad thing. After all, Qin Dongqing and Lu Pingon were more or less hidden dangers in the sect. As long as they were there, the Chun family's faction wouldn't completely disperse, and the fight between the factions would continue. However, once the two of them left, the Chun family's faction would be completely leaderless, and it would collapse on its own. Chapter 5370. Exionegia was a little worried at first, afraid that he would be punished for not doing his job well. But he didn't expect Lin Yi to be like this. He breathed out in relief. All right, you guys go. The most important thing right now is to take control of the big picture. Lin Yi waved his hand. Yes. Exionegia and Hong Zijuan immediately left with high spirits. Ha ha. Fate really is messing with people. These two used to be Hong Zijuan's boss. But now he's going to be Exionegia's lackey, and he's still accepting it so calmly. His personality is amazing. Qintian and the others laughed. Birds of a feather flocked together. They're actually the same kind of people. Their personalities are soft, and they look like good people who only care about their own safety, but they're ambitious as well. They'll only jump out and bite people when they're cornered. Now that Lin Yibro has accepted them, of course, Hong Zijuan won't go looking for trouble. Ziyu said with a face that could see through people. Face isn't important. Life is more important. Lingshan nodded. Lin Yi couldn't help but laugh. You guys are quite good at reading people. All right, stop slacking off here. Go train hard. All right. The group smiled. If it was their original temperament, they wouldn't have trained so diligently. However, Chen Jiu and the others had given them a direct lesson. If they weren't strong enough, they wouldn't be able to move an inch in this small world. They were all ambitious people, and they didn't want to live under Lin Yi's wings forever. After all, even if they couldn't keep up with Lin Yi's footsteps, they couldn't be a burden to Lin Yi. Central Island, K. Luo Mountain. Since there were no sects stationed here and there were wild spirit beasts, there were very few people within 10 miles. Unless it was some sect training or something like that, this place was basically a no man's land. A giant eagle descended from the sky. This was the most symbolic flying spirit beast of the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island. It was a rare ferocious bird even in the small primitive Jianghu. Except for the sect leader, only the highest elder with a higher status could control it. On the back of this giant vulture was none other than Qin Dongqing, Lu Pingon, and the unconscious Grand Supreme Elder Qinjiu, who had secretly escaped. Since he chose to sneak out of the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island, in essence, it was no different from betraying the sect. In this way, it was clear that they couldn't stay on the North Island any longer. The other islands were too far away, and they weren't very familiar with them. Qin Dongqing and Lu Pingon discussed for a long time and finally decided to escape to the Middle Island. The ungoverned K. Luo Mountain was a ready-made foothold. Although the K. Luo Mountain was dangerous. However, one of them was at the peak of the late stage of the Golden Core realm, while the other was at the middle stage of the Golden Core realm. As long as they were a little more cautious, they would be able to protect themselves. Old Lu, we have to figure out what to do next. After all, we can't really stay in this ravine all the time, right? Qin Dongqing frowned. He was from the Chun family of the North Island and had always been regarded as the successor. He was used to living in luxury since he was a child. Now he was forced to escape to the K, Luo Mountain. It was okay for a day or two, but he couldn't endure it for a long time. But now the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island has fallen into the hands of Lin Yi. Both of us may have been accused of betraying the sect now. If we go out rashly and are targeted by people with ulterior motives, we'll be in big trouble. Lu Pingan also had a headache. No one would want to stay in this barren land. But the problem was that betraying the sect was a first-class felony in the small, primitive Jianghu. Even if they walked out of the Middle Island, they would be beaten by everyone. What if they were encountered by the sects of the Middle Island that were on good terms with the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island? The consequences would be even more unimaginable. We still have to give it a try. We can't go on like this. If we really waste a few months, we won't be able to do anything. If it really takes a few months, just the cultivation resources for the two of us will be a big problem. Chen Dongqing shook his head. If it was an ordinary master of the foundation establishment stage, it would be possible to get some cultivation resources. But both of them were masters above the middle stage of the Gold Core realm. Almost all the cultivation resources of the Gold Core stage in the small primitive Jianghu were in the hands of various sects and families, not to mention the sparsely populated K, Luo Mountain. It was difficult to buy them in the market. The path of cultivation was like rowing a boat against the current. After a long time, the strength of the two of them would inevitably decline, and then they would not be able to find peace even if they cried. How about... Lu Pingan pondered for a moment and suggested, let's simply go to another sect. With our strength, I believe that any of the primitive sects will be happy to accept us. At that time, we can spread the story of Lin Yi occupying the magpie's nest, which will inevitably attract the attention of the entire Primordial Alliance, and we will be in an invincible position. That sounds like a good idea. Chen Dongqing nodded in agreement. He was a master at the middle stage of the Gold Core realm, and Lu Pingan was a master at the peak of the late stage of the Gold Core realm. With such strength, if they went to any of the primitive sects, they would be treated well. Of course, the premise was that they could gain the trust of the other party. Fortunately, over the years, in order to help him rise, Chun Jiu often took him to various primitive sects to show his face. Among them, there were a few who were on good terms, so it should not be a big problem to go and seek refuge. So let's go now. Lu Pingan looked at Qin Dongcheng. Although his strength was higher, he still humbled himself in front of Qin Dongqing. After all, Qin Jiu was not really dead. If they could find a way to cure him, they would not have a hard time with the protection of this Yuaning realm old monster. There is one more question. What about my ancestor? We can't just go and seek refuge behind his back, can we? Qin Dongqing was still frowning. Qin Jiu was the greatest hope for him and Lu Pingan to turn things around. Unless it was confirmed that he was completely dead, it would be impossible to abandon him. Right now, how to settle him was a big problem. That's definitely not appropriate. Master's identity and strength are too sensitive. If we take him rashly, not to mention that few people dare to take us in, even if they do, it will inevitably give birth to all kinds of dirty ideas, which is not good. Lu Pingan shook his head. After all, if they really saved him, he would be a real Yuaning realm old monster. The Blue Cloud sect of the North Island had already staged a dove occupying a magpie's nest, and other primitive sects would not repeat the same mistake. In this case, we can only divide into two groups. One of us will go first, and the other will stay to take care of the ancestor. When everything is ready over there, we will find a way to secretly transfer the ancestor there. How about that? Qin Dongqing said. That's a way, but who will go and who will stay? Lu Pingan looked at Qin Dongqing. This was another problem. Although the two of them were now grasshoppers on the same rope, they could not be considered as confiding in each other. They did not know what kind of little schemes they had in their bellies. No matter who went and who stayed, there would always be various concerns. Chapter 5371. Just then, a strange voice suddenly cut in. You two don't have to worry. As long as you join us, all your worries will not be a problem. Who's that? Chen Dongqing and Lu Pingan were shocked at the same time. Only then did they see several figures in the dense forest not far away. All of them were shrouded in black robes, looking extremely mysterious. Seeing this scene, the two of them suddenly felt their blood run cold. Although they were not nascent soul old monsters, their strength was not low. They did not expect that they would unknowingly fall into the encirclement of these people. It was incredible. Hee, you can call me Mysterious Man. The black-robed man's tone was profound. If Bing Wuqing was here, she would know that this guy was the bespectacled professor. Mysterious Man, what do you want? Chen Dongqing and Lu Pingan looked at each other, as if they were facing a formidable enemy. The other party had concealed themselves very well. They could not see their strength for a while, but they were sure that since these people could surround the two of them without anyone noticing, their strength was definitely not weak. Nothing. Since you've come to our territory as the host, we should come over and say hello, shouldn't we? The bespectacled professor smiled. Host? The two of them could not help but be stunned. The reason why they chose the Luo Mountain in the Middle Island as their first stop was because it was an ownerless land. Otherwise, they would not have rashly come in. When did such a group of mysterious hosts appear? We haven't been here for long, so it's normal that you haven't heard of us. After all, you're guests from the North Island, thousands of miles away. The bespectacled professor looked at the two surprised expressions and became more and more playful. How do you know we're from the North Island? Chen Dongqing and Lu Pingan were shocked again. They had just missed the mention of the Blue Cloud sect from the North Island when they were talking just now. They did not say anything else at all. Could it be that these people had been guarding here from the beginning? Not only do I know that you're from the North Island, but I also know your identity. Chen Dongqing, the deputy leader of the Blue Cloud sect from the North Island, Elder Lu Pingan, and the one on the ground is Highest Elder Qinjiu. Am I right? The bespectacled professor smiled. Who on earth are you? The two of them were even more shocked. Didn't I say it just now? You can call me Mysterious Man. The bespectacled doctor paused and then said, both of you are the victims of Lin Yi, and Lin Yi happens to be our enemy. It must be fate that you came all the way here to seek refuge. What? Do you also have a grudge with Lin Yi? The two of them were dumbfounded. They thought to themselves, what kind of people does Lin Yi have? He even has enemies in this God-forsaken place. What a coincidence! Of course. Allow me to ask, do the two of you want to seek revenge on Lin Yi? Asked the bespectacled doctor. Chen Dongqing and Lu Pingan looked at each other. Although they were full of fear towards the mysterious man in front of them, they still said truthfully, of course we want to, but we don't have the strength to do so. It's good that you have the heart. As for strength, as long as the two of you are willing to join us, you will soon have it. The bespectacled doctor persuaded. Join you? What do you mean? The two of them looked at each other. Until now, they were not even clear whether they were enemies or friends. How did they get to this point? The meaning is very clear. If the two of you join us, I can make you become old monsters in the Yuanying realm in a very short time. What do you think? The bespectacled doctor's words were shocking. Old monsters in the Yuanying realm. Hearing these words, Chen Dongqing and Lu Pingan were completely shocked. When they came to their senses, they looked at each other as if they were looking at a monster. Was this guy's brain fried? Old monsters in the Yuanying realm were existences that could only be encountered by chance. With their qualifications, especially Chen Dongqing, even if they were given a few hundred years, they would not be able to reach the threshold. You don't believe me? That's simple. Anyway, you have come here. Just stay and have a look. It won't be long before you understand that what I said is true. The bespectacled doctor suddenly threw 2 elixirs to the two of them and said, This is a gift for you too. Golden elixir? This was Chen Dongqing and Lu Pingan's first reaction, but then they shook their heads and denied it. This was definitely not a golden elixir. It just looked a little similar at first glance. Of course, it is not an ordinary golden elixir, but a special improved version. As for the effect, it is at least 5 times more than an ordinary golden elixir. The bespectacled doctor laughed. The two of them listened with bright eyes. But after all, they did not know whether the other party was an enemy or a friend. This elixir did not feel ordinary. From the appearance alone, it was even far above an ordinary golden elixir. However, who knew if it was poison? You still don't believe me? It's okay. There should be a way to test elixirs in this small ancient world. If you too are worried, you can go out and find someone to test it. I can wait. The bespectacled doctor loosened the reins. Thank you very much. Chen Dongqing and Lu Pingan nodded quickly. At this moment, their minds were completely focused on the elixir. They could not wait. After the bespectacled doctor left with his people, the two of them did not hesitate to go out on the vultures to find someone to test the elixir. Soon the results came out. Although it was impossible to accurately identify what elixir it was certain that there was no poison in the 2 elixirs. They were very clean. This result was somewhat unexpected, but at the same time, it made the 2 of them overjoyed. Since it was not poison, it meant that there was no danger. In turn, it confirmed the mysterious man's words to a certain extent. The effect of this elixir was at least 5 times more than an ordinary golden elixir. Was this possible? Both of them had a bit of luck in their hearts. If this was the case, then they would be rich. They did not hesitate to find a place to start taking the elixir. 3 days later, the 2 of them rode the vultures back to K. Luo Mountain. Sure enough, the bespectacled doctor was already waiting here with his people. How is it? Are you satisfied with the effect of the elixir? The bespectacled doctor smiled. Chen Dongqing and Lu Pingan did not speak, but the momentum shown by the 2 of them at this moment was enough to explain everything. They were both in the golden elixir, great perfection. In just 3 days, Lu Pingan broke through from the peak of the golden elixir late stage to the golden elixir great perfection was understandable. But Chen Dongqing broke through from the golden elixir middle stage to the golden elixir great perfection, which was really incredible. Looking at the 2 of you, you should have discovered it, right? The bespectacled doctor continued to smile. Chapter 5372. Just as the bespectacled doctor had said, they had already discovered the faintly discernible poisonous gas in their bodies. This horrifying discovery was enough to completely extinguish their little bit of joy. Even if they were beaten to death, they would never have thought that after they had already found an appraiser, and the result was that there was clearly no poisonous substance in their bodies. There would be such a terrifying and troublesome poisonous gas left behind after eating it. Little did they know that this was a method that was integrated with the top technology of the secular world. It would be a miracle if it could be identified by the conventional appraisal methods of the ancient Jianghu. What do you want? Chen Dongqing and Lu Pingan were a little panicked. Their strength had skyrocketed, but the price they had to pay was poisonous gas in their bodies. This was equivalent to selling themselves alive. No matter who it was, they would not be happy. They would only panic. Nothing much. Don't worry. Although the poisonous gas can't be eliminated, it won't break out in a short time. Even if it takes a long time, as long as you take the antidote regularly, it can be effectively suppressed. There won't be any problems. The bespectacled doctor said lightly. The 2 looked at each other. These words did not make them feel much more at ease. Instead, they became more frightened. The more stable the poison was, the more firmly the other party controlled it. What did this mysterious man want? Still worried? The bespectacled doctor looked at the 2's expressions and smiled. He comforted them. My purpose has been stated from the beginning. We have a common enemy, so I need you 2 to join our organization. As for the strength of our organization, I believe there is no need to say more. You 2 should have a deep understanding of it. As long as you two cooperate well, I can help you become Yuanying stage old monsters in a very short time. Chun Dongqing and Lu Pingon had subconsciously regarded these words as a fantasy before, but now it was different. With the previous medicinal pills as a foundation, they could be said to believe it without a doubt. On one hand, there was the temptation of a Yuanying stage old monster, and on the other hand, there was the threat of inexplicable poisonous gas. In the face of this carrot and stick, normal people would not have a second choice. Okay, I'll join. Chun Dongqing was the first to make a decision. I'll join too. Lu Pingon was not willing to be left behind. Very good. With the help of the two of you, it will be even more convenient for us to do things in the primordial underworld in the future. It's like adding wings to a tiger. Congratulations. The mysterious person was overjoyed when he heard this. Although these two people's surrender was completely within his expectation, it still made him very happy. After all, if the center really wanted to gain a foothold in the small Jianghu of the primordial era, it had to rely heavily on the local natives. These two people were the top executives of the Green Cloud sect of the North Island. Whether it was experience, connections, or influence, they were far from being comparable to ordinary people. Even if they had escaped from the Green Cloud sect of the North Island, they were still very useful. I will do my utmost and dedicate my life to you. Both of them were shrewd people. Since they had already reached this step, they naturally adjusted their mentality extremely quickly, making it impeccable. However, only they themselves knew what kind of thoughts they had in their hearts. Good. The two of you have just broken through, so you need to cultivate and stabilize your realm. After a while, I believe there will be good news, the bespectacled doctor said with a profound smile. What good news? Chun Dongqing and Lu Pingon looked at each other curiously. You'll know when the time comes. When saying this, the bespectacled doctor's eyes fell on Qinjiu, who was unconscious. For him, the joining of Chun Dongqing and Lu Pingon was not the biggest gain. The biggest gain was the supreme elder of the Green Cloud sect of the North Island. The key to mass-producing nascent soul old monsters in the future would fall on this guy. 3 months passed in a flash. Snow Sword School of the Middle Island. For Su Xiaodong, this was a special day because her most valued pro-disciple, Lung Lung, had come out of seclusion. After a few months of seclusion cultivation, Lung Lung successfully crossed the barrier between the foundation establishment stage and the gold core stage. Now she was a real master in the early stage of the gold core stage. As a master, Su Xiaodong herself was only in the early stage of the gold core stage. Now she was actually caught up by her own disciple. According to the rules of the sect, they would be on equal footing in the future. This kind of thing would inevitably be a little awkward for others, but not for Su Xiaodong. Instead, she felt very proud. It had only been a mere 1.5 years' time, but Lung Lung had soared from an early-stage foundation establishment realm disciple to the early-stage gold core realm expert today. Even though such an amazing performance could not be compared to Xue Jianfeng, who had a cheat code, it was still considered as shocking. No matter who taught such a disciple, he or she would be extremely proud. Not only that, with Lung Lung's heaven-defying aptitude and the various elixirs given by Lin Yi, after crossing the huge barrier of the gold core stage, it was completely possible for her to return to the previous heaven-defying state of rapid breakthrough. It would take dozens or hundreds of years for others to go from the early stage of the gold core stage to the great perfection of the gold core stage. But for Lung Lung, even if she did not use the improved version of the elixirs with great side effects, it would not take that long. Perhaps in a few years, the Snow Sword School would have another great perfection of the gold core stage. However, before the master and disciple could have a few words, a familiar yet disgusting voice cut in. It was Xue Jianfeng. Yo, you've finally come out of isolation. It looks like you're already in the gold core stage. How rare! Xue Jianfeng walked towards the two with an evil smile on his face. It was obvious that he did not come with good intentions. Lung Lung and her master, Su Xiaodong, looked at each other and could not help but feel a little surprised. Ever since this fellow's legs were destroyed by Bing Wuqing in public, not long after that, his father, Xue Liping, sent him out to seek medical treatment. There was no news of him for a few months. They did not expect him to appear again today. There was something strange about this matter from the beginning. Logically speaking, with the injuries on his legs, the doctors in the Snow Sword School might be able to cure him. Even if they did not have the ability, they could at least give it a try. There was no need for him to go out to seek medical treatment, let alone stay out for a few months. Seeing that Lung Lung and Su Xiaodong did not speak, Xue Jianfeng did not mind. He walked closer and reached out his hand to touch Lung Lung's cheek. He continued with an evil smile. "TSKK, I haven't seen you for a few months. Junior sister, you've become more and more attractive. I can't help but feel sorry for you. Initially, I wanted to continue to pursue your past deeds, but I've changed my mind now. As long as you repent and mend your ways, I can let bygones be bygones. How about that? Repent and mend my ways?" Lung Lung took a step back and avoided his lecherous hand. She had already advanced into the gold core stage. Even if she was only in the early stage of the gold core stage, she was at least at the same level as the other party. She would definitely not be able to defeat him, but she would not be helpless to the extent that she could only wait for death.